On this episode of the DTVC podcast, Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time is back, and we're continuing our look at Steven Seagal's DTV oeuvre with Today You Die. I almost forgot the name of the movie we're talking about today. It's Today You Die, the one with Treach. So stay tuned for that. We'll be talking about that one in just a little bit. And then next week, Freddie Young from Full Moon Reviews is back for our Halloween episode. We're going to be looking at Maniac Cop, a movie that I killed. If you go back and look at my review, I killed it because I didn't like the way they treated Robert Zadar's face in that movie. That was late 20s Matt with that opinion. Mid 40s Matt has a very different opinion of Maniac Cop. So we'll be talking about that. Before that, though, we have a really great conversation about, sort of the movie industry today and like who's going to see movies, why they're going to see them, what kind of movies they're looking for. So a really great conversation that we have to start that episode. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be next week. And then for the week after, we still have some recording to do, but I do have a couple episodes for November in the can already. We've got Rich Pierce, screenwriter who did Sector 4 Extraction. He's going to be on. We're going to be talking about Operation or a Capital Conspiracy, not Operation anything, Capital Conspiracy. So look for that next month in November. Also, Ty from Comeuppance for his monthly spot. We look at Shepherd Code 2 and Desert Dawn. So Desert Dawn, that's the Philippi Factory movie that we've been looking for a long time. We finally covered that one. And then Shepherd Code 2, we got a screener for that. So that was the Alain Delaby sequel to the Shepherd Code with Don the Dragon Wilson as well. So look out for that next month as well. And then DTVC Extra, again, floating around all kinds of ideas for that. Maybe we will do something. We'll see what happens there. Then also the YouTube channel. I did post a video. I posted the bathhouse scene from Showdown in Little Tokyo. Only thing was, as I was putting that video together, I realized that there are topless women in the video. The stabbing scene where he stabs the sumo wrestler was a little bit graphic, and I thought, okay, I probably should put the 18 plus gate on this because if I didn't, I imagine at some point someone was going to flag it and I was going to have to put it on anyway. What that means though is it doesn't show up in your algorithm quite as much. So if you're just using YouTube and you've watched some of the other videos, you may not get suggested that one. Also, if you don't have a YouTube account, you can't watch it because it wants you to sign in, and then when you created the account, you put your birth date. So that's the other thing too. I know that happens to me sometimes if I'm watching YouTube and I'm not signed in. If a movie has is age restricted, I can't watch it. The other thing I found out too is I guess if it's age restricted, you might not be able to watch it on your TV if you're using the TV app. So you may have to only be able to watch it on your computer or your phone. So I think in the future, when I'm looking at more movies to do, I'll keep an eye out on that. The problem was I'd done all the work. I'd put together the clips, I had what I wanted to say and all that stuff. And then as I'm watching, I'm like, oh, there's topless women in this scene. I need to age restrict it. And I was like, okay, I've already done all the work. Let's just put the video out and I'll age restrict it. But it means, it's not going to get the views that the other ones get. If you're not able to see it, you may have to go directly to the page. And again, you'll have to be signed in to YouTube to be able to watch it. So keep that in mind. Now, for future videos, I think one that I'm looking at doing is the opening sequence in Hard Justice because that's just so amazing. I watched that one recently, so keep an eye out for that. We might do that one. May do some Punisher as well. I watched the Dolph Lundgren Punisher recently. There's some great scenes in that, so one that I might think about. I don't know. That one might be more likely to get clipped for copyright, though. That's the only thing with that. It's one reason why I might not consider that one. So Hard Justice, I would think Hard Justice, right? I'll probably get like some kind of copyright strike, but nothing too crazy. So so keep an eye out. Probably next month sometime we'll get Hard Justice up. Now in terms of the site, this past weekend, we did, for Imperial Entertainment, we did Ironheart, which was kind of a trip of a movie. Check out the review on that. You've got some Richard Norton, you got some Bolo Young, but then the star is this guy, Britton Lee, who it was interesting, right? He's a great martial artist, but it was an interesting movie. He's like, his partner gets killed. He goes to Portland, Oregon to find out the truth. He finds love, all kind. It's a trip. So look for that review. I wrote that one last weekend. We're going to finish our Hall of Fame inductions. Just to, again, that review was Imperial Entertainment's induction into the Hall of Fame. We're going to finish with Corporate Ladder as we get Kathleen Kinmont into the Hall of Fame. So that'll be this weekend. And then next weekend for Dolph's birthday, we're going to post Small Apartments. So a movie I've been meaning to do for a long time. I'm sure he's not in it that much, but I don't know what that'll be, like his 73rd, 74th a review, something like that. So we're getting up there with Dolph. And at this point, I know he's got some movies coming out next year, so I imagine we'll be reviewing those. Because after that, there isn't much left to review for him. We've got Fat Slags. I think I can find that one on Cinemageddon or something like that, because it's really not available. But that was one we've got to do with Dolph. Also, Sharknado 5. He has a very small part in Sharknado 5, so probably review that. I don't think I'll be doing the Aquaman movies. I think, in the past I would have done the Aquamans, right? I would have done those, like I did the Expendables. There's Expendables 3 and 4 that I also could do, because I did do parts 1 and 2. Again, in the past I used to do more big screen movies. Now, lately, I really haven't been doing them, but maybe, for more Dolph posts, we might do that. But at least for his birthday, we're going to do Small Apartment, so he'll get something else up as well. Yeah, and then in terms of other appearances that I've made, Dark Breed, that episode is up now. So John did a two-parter for the episode in honor of Rick Pepin. Part 2, I thought it was going to be part 2 that was going to have my contribution in it, but actually it's part 1. So part 1, John and I talk about the movie, and then also he interviews Ken Blakey, a cinematographer who worked on that movie as well. So, and then also he has people calling in and giving their memories of him. Paul Volk in particular has a really great message, where he's talking about Rick Pepin. He actually talked about what he said at the funeral. So really, really, really great stuff there. So check that out. And then part 2, it's the full interview that he did with Rick Pepin back when he first started this project, and then also an interview he does with Joseph Merhi about Pepin. So so it's a 2-part episode, but definitely check that out. Again, Rick Pepin, the P in PM Entertainment, it doesn't get much bigger than that for us. So, and I think John does a really great job with it. So check that out. One thing I forgot to mention about my appearance on Bulletproof, which was a couple weeks ago now, that was their Duty Palooza week, when they were kind of celebrating Michael Dudikoff and his birthday. Dudikoff, he retweeted, or he shared the Duty Palooza post about that, and he thanked them for it. So I don't think it gets much bigger than that when you're making this kind of tribute to somebody, right? Is that to have them share it, and thank you for it. That's like kind of as good as it gets there. So definitely go check that out. Bulletproof had a couple episodes since then, since I was on for we did Virtual Assassin, aka Cyberjack. So you should be subscribed to Bulletproof's podcast as well. So you should be checking that out anyway. But I forgot to mention that last week that that was crazy. When you looked at I think on Facebook, I think he shared the post on his Facebook page. Just absolutely fantastic. So you gotta love that. I think that is everything in terms of those kinds of things. Of course, books. We have news on Bainbridge. I just released a new version of Bainbridge. So it's still the same text, still the same story, all of that, but it's a smaller print version of it, so that, one, I could have some text on the spine, but also just to kind of fit the fact that it is a smaller book, to have it kind of be a smaller paperback size. So that version is available now. The only thing is it's not linking to the Kindle version. So depending on what you're looking for, whether it's the paperback or Kindle, you may have to search for either one under my author's name. I did remove the original paperback from publication, so that one's not available. But definitely check that out. I am pulling ideas for the new Bainbridge book that I'm going to probably try to write the end of this year, maybe get it out for next year. We'll see what happens. But I'm kind of just mapping it out on my little notepad there. The idea behind this new Bainbridge is that his partner Geary goes on vacation, so he gets a new partner, a woman named Chris Fairchild, who's also a cop on the edge, and they're investigating the Yakuza that's coming into the city. They're selling a new version of meth, which the version of meth, I use the Japanese term for water ice, which is water ice is what they call Italian ice here in Philadelphia. It's kind of a joke there. Actually, not water ice, wooder ice. Wooder ice is what you call it. But anyway, actually, I think I did call it wooder ice. I think it was wooder, WOODER ice is the term I used for the Japanese version. I can't remember, it was like udaisu or something like that is what they're calling the meth. But anyway, so they're kind of trying to take over the crime scene, because what happens is in the 6 months, this book takes place 6 months after the previous Bainbridge, and in those 6 months, John Bainbridge has been decimating crime so much that the crime bosses and everything in LA are weakened, and so the Yakuza are going to come in here and sort of take over things and sell their meth. So we're going to borrow from Shonen Little Tokyo, from The Punisher, but also going to have moments from Hard Justice, The Sweeper. Those are are also going to be things that I'm going to put in this story. But yeah, I'm pulling the ideas together. Then I just got to start typing it out. The original Bainbridge is like 28,000 words. I think this one I'm going to target maybe something in like the 40 to 50,000 word range. So a little bit bigger, a little bit more robust than that one. That one's also almost kind of a proof of concept as well. That's why it's so short. I just wanted to see if I could do it, but then I've kind of left it for a couple of years. So it's time for something else to come out. So we'll try to get that out soon. Hopefully sometime next year. So again, watch this space. We're already over 10 minutes here, so why don't we call this good here, have John playing our theme song from Miscellaneous Plumbing Fixtures, and then when we come back, Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time is on, and we are going to be looking at Today You Die. Hey everyone, welcome back to the DTVC podcast. As always, this is Matt here, and I am joined once again by Scott Murphy from All 90s Action All the Time as we continue our way through Steven Seagal's DTV oeuvre. Welcome back, Scott.
It's good to be back, Matt. It's always good to be back. Talking more of this madness.
Yeah, so we figure out this is 13, I think, right? Is that where lucky number 13?
Yeah, I think we're up to 13. Yes, that's I'm pretty sure that we're up to 13 now.
Wow, yeah. And so 13 is unlucky, I guess, in England, United States, and everything. But then is it 17? I remember hearing that 17 was unlucky, like in Italy or something like that, because soccer players didn't want to wear 17.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I could double check. I know Italians, but I could check in next time. Whatever we're doing next time, I can confirm that. I'll ask in Italian.
Yeah, but at least with our West, and I don't know why 13 is considered unlucky. Is it just because it's an odd? It's like a prime number and an odd number, and it's a baker's dozen?
Yeah, no, I don't know the I don't know the origin of that. I was going to say I don't know the etymology of that, but that's just words.
Right.
So that wouldn't count as etymology, really, because it's not the origin. Because that would only be the origin of the word 13. That wouldn't be the origin of the mythology around the number 13. I don't know. I don't know why 13 is considered unlucky. Just like I don't understand why, the origins of what makes some numbers good and what makes some numbers evil, the kind of seven heaven thing, so 7 is like a good number, 6 is an evil number, 5 is like a kind of neutral number. I don't know the origins of that either.
right, exactly, because in Chinese the number 4 being unlucky makes sense because it sounds like the word for death. So it's it makes plenty of sense there. But yeah, I mean, I know the number 3, because I guess the Holy Trinity, and that's why people think everything happens in threes. So it almost never fails, right? When you get a spate of celebrity deaths, that there's somebody who's going to be like, oh, see, they all die in threes. And then there's always the comments of yeah, it just seems to work out that way. And I always read that and think, but 3 or 4 other people have also died around this time. So
but they don't count there. There's only people are only counting the ones they care about.
Right.
Yeah, no, people are the 3 thing is really interesting. Like you say, the Holy Trinity. You can see 3s in lots of things. Of course, anybody who knows anybody who knows comedy, they always say about the rule of 3, right. You kind of, having that, yeah, so three is a very important. But again, you probably, I guess that like our brain, like, oh, this is a weird conversation to start this.
Right. It was about 13,
So,
yeah.
but our brain, like, because we only have a limited understanding of reality. We try to make sense of things, and therefore we can see patterns in things that patterns don't necessarily exist in. But it's just, I guess, it's just a way of our brain making sense of things. But that's more connected to the discussion around three and the rules of three than the number 13. But anyway, we got oddly philosophical off the bat here.
Yeah, it's always funny how transitions can happen, or how tangents happen on this podcast. They come out of nowhere. But I guess lucky or unlucky, number 13, a baker's dozen of Seagal movies, so to speak. Which I guess that's the baker's dozen, right? That's when the baker's doing you a solid, I think, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's like a lucky thing. That's
Right.
like a kind of like, because you're getting like an extra thing. It's like, oh, I've got an extra roll today, or whatever it is.
Exactly. Speaking of Italians, my wife's and our close friend, who he's no longer with us, but he was from Naples, living here in Philly, and he would go around to all of these places, these like these different like Italian, either like meat places or bakeries and things like that, and they just always gave him free stuff. They were just like, here you go. And so it was great. It was like one of those things where, like, if I would go to those places by myself, I would get none of that. But if I went with him, he's like, oh yeah, here's 3 extra strombolis, or here's some extra prosciutto, and so, stuff like that. That's like sausages and stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I would get none of that.
Right.
I get none of it. Like, we used to always joke in our family that, like, Murphy's Law applies double to us because our surname is actually Murphy. Right. So it's so we get it times 2.
Exactly. That makes sense as well. Yes, I can see that. Yes. Yeah. It's kind of funny with all of those, because I mean, one of the interesting things as we get into this movie we're going to be talking about, Today You Die, the movie starts with tarot card reading, which I don't know if I've ever mentioned.
It does start with tarot card reading, but I do want to say, before it gets into the scene of the tarot card reading,
right.
It starts with a kind of white guy bluesy riff on the soundtrack, which brings back a kind of sense memory of like early Seagal, you're kind of like, you're out for justices and stuff like that. But it's just like, it briefly gets you excited before the movie starts, and then you're like, it's okay.
I mean, what a letdown too, to just have tarot card reading. It's interesting because, like, there's the whole tarot card thing. I don't know how much of the actual, like, cards and that kind of stuff play a part in the movie later, right? Like, I don't know how much it's foretelling what we're going to see, other than we know something.
That's true. Yeah. But also we should reveal at this point, the tarot card reading's not real.
Right.
It's part of a dream she's had.
That's right. Because she wakes up. Oh, go ahead.
So like, the weirdest part of this movie, and it is a strand of the film that, like, most people in the movie are not aware of.
Right.
Because most of the conversations of this particular subplot are with Seagal's character, Harlan, and his wife, possibly, or just girlfriend, maybe. I'm not sure. It never really clarifies that. The conversation they have. And so there's a couple of weird scenes where it seems like she has kind of second sight of some sort. And she has weird kind of predictive dreams that predict things. So there is this, like, supernatural element to the film. And one of the other characters who we'll get to is part of the supernatural element. One of the villains is part of the supernatural element. But it's never fully incorporated with the rest of the movie. It's just like in these little weird random dashes that you're like, is this supposed to be important? And then we just move on and we don't talk about it for another 15, 20 minutes. Then it comes back and you're like, okay, so it's coming back again. Is it important now? And then it disappears again. And it's the whole movie's like that. And it doesn't really affect anything. But because you're continually waiting for it to be like what's going to, affect the plot in a big way at some point, even if it's just at the end. And it never really does. And it's like, yeah, basically the weirdest element of this film is there is this few points in the movie where it becomes like a kind of supernatural thriller, and then it just snaps back to being like a kind of like 48 hours Lethal Weapon style buddy. Well, I mean, in this case, it's buddy con rather than buddy cop, but just kind of buddy film. So it's oh yes, and also briefly, it's a prison drama. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this film, I guess. Well, I guess we'll get into all of that. But yes, I guess that's what I wanted to say about the Jada character and how she has like the second sight that we really don't delve into in any major way.
Right. No, exactly. I mean, and I mean, the other thing is so one of the things I was reading my review from 2007, which I would have been in my late 20s then. Hadn't moved down here to Philadelphia. I was a year, a good 5 or 6 years away from that as well. And I was making fun of the fact that Seagal was sleeping in a sweatshirt. So like, when she wakes up with him, he's in a sweatshirt, he's like in a hoodie and everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that's why would you wear a hoodie to bed? And now they live here in Philadelphia where
because he's just getting up. I think he's just like I think maybe in my head, to try and make it make sense, he's got up out of bed.
Right.
He's got changed. He's come back into bed just to say bye, basically. Like I'm off to do my cat burglary thing, and that's why he's dressed like that. Otherwise, I'm not sure what the fuck he's doing.
No, because later on he's in a hoodie too when he gets into bed with her. So it's like,
yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, but again, I guess I thought he'd just come back from a job, and then he's done a thing, and then. I don't know. Maybe he goes to bed in a hoodie. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things in this movie, but like it don't really make sense. That like I don't know if we can cover them all.
No, it's a lot going on here. Yeah, so so the first thing we find out is yeah, I guess maybe like a few overarching things about this movie before we get too deep into it. One is that there is a lot of footage from other movies in this movie.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
And so you get a sense that they were mitigating a lot of the, we know, like, I think we were talking about this, that this movie combined with I guess this was the movie where Seagal has the falling out with the Millennium guys, with Lerner, Boaz Davidson, etc. And so that's of course why he doesn't do Expendables. There is a movie that comes after this that he does with them, Mercenary for Justice, which I think he was just on the hook for. I think they were all on the hook. They all had to do it. The director of this movie, Don Fauntleroy, he did Mercenary for Justice because we talked about him, Don Fauntleroy, and that when we covered that one. Apparently he brings the script to Seagal, and Seagal's like, "I want you to direct it," and he was like, "Oh, I guess." So the Millennium guys must have been like, when they had to do the second movie, it was like, "Okay, Fauntleroy, you can direct him again," which he said was not a fun experience.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. It's amazing that Fauntleroy worked with him again. Like worked with him like another 2 times because Fauntleroy does Urban Justice as well.
Right.
So like yeah, and it's weird. Yeah, reading the trivia, and like it is interesting. Like I don't know how much. Like the trivia seems to suggest that Fauntleroy was just supposed to be a go-between, and then ended up being the director because like Seagal demanded it. But then the trivia also seems to suggest that Fauntleroy mainly only directed Seagal's scenes,
right?
But there's no indication of who directed the rest of the movie. Right. And I'm like, well, if you only directed Seagal's scenes, like, and then because then I was thinking like from a kind of DGA standpoint, then why does he get the credit? Like, what? Because surely, Seagal is in as much of the film as he's in, but he's the lead, obviously. So he's in quite a few scenes, but there's also quite a few scenes where there's obvious stunt doubling. And then there's quite a lot else going on where Seagal's not about. So, like, probably more than when Seagal is about. So I'm like, well, surely whoever directed those scenes should get at least a co-directing credit. Like, if that's true. Like, again, IMDb trivia is not always 100% fact because, it's user-generated. But at the same time, it's like, well, if this is true, well, who directed the rest? Why did they not get at least a co-directing credit? It's very confusing. As many of the things on screen are confusing, and many of the things that apparently happen behind the scenes are also equally confusing and also like just horrific. Like if everything is true, that's there.
Well, right, because one of the pieces of trivia that we were talking about, and this is one of those pieces of trivia that could go either way, was the one about him and Robert Miano, where right, it said that that Seagal actually broke his arm and he sued him. I mean, it's like that could be because we don't really have the joke trivia, the one that's like clearly the joke.
There is no joke trivia. Yeah, there's no kind of clear kind of like silly things that are like, oh, okay. There's no kind of like the thing about him losing his big hat, or the thing about his mate Vladdy P, or there's none of that kind of joviality. But yeah, so like, but I mean, like that's even more kind of like, because if the trivia is to be believed, Steven Seagal was essentially sexually harassing Mary Moreau, who played his girlfriend in the movie Jada. And apparently Mary Moreau had something with Robert Miano, and Seagal was jealous and broke his arm. So if the trivia is to be believed, he is being a dick to everybody. Even people who were excited to work with him, because apparently Treach was excited to work with him. He's being a dick to everybody. Apparently, he is sexually harassing his co-star, who plays his girlfriend in the film, Mary Moreau, and he also allegedly broke Robert Miano's arm, which led to Robert Miano getting a settlement when he sued the production for having an unsafe production. So, and then we have this odd directing situation where Donnie Fantoroy might have directed most of the movie or just some of the movie. We don't really know. So, it sounds like an absolute nightmare of a production. Mainly around Seagal. I mean, I don't think probably the rest of them got on okay or whatever, but just sounds mad.
It does, and that might be part of the reason why we have so many productions. I mean, the thing with Miano, like when you see the break on screen, it's definitely a fake break that they show on screen. But by the same,
definitely, yeah. No, the one they show on the screen is definitely there's no way that can be the real break, because like he kind of like, it's definitely some sort of, when he kind of splits the arm like that, it's definitely, you're looking at like some sort of dummy or whatever, it's very obvious. So I don't know, at what point he broke the arm or whatever.
No, but there's a scene, later in the movie where he's got one of the bad guys in like some kind of a wrist lock thing, and that guy looks like he's legitimately in pain. So we know that Seagal has a penchant for that, of like hurting stunt people, of being very
he's got a reputation,
yeah, and so it's just as conceivable that he broke, because we've heard of him breaking other people's arms or back. I think he broke somebody's back in a movie. So it's like. Yeah, so you see this happening, and the other thing too about the Mari Moro part of it is also very believable, because again, we've heard from other.
I mean, it's totally believable. I mean, it's absolutely believable, because he has such a track record of this. Obviously in the trivia, we've read a bunch of things before about him either sexually harassing co-stars, or him, or women just not being cast, because like he's he's asked them to do things in additions, getting topless or whatever, and just generally acting in a sleazy, creepy way that has scared female co-stars off of I've been like, well, fuck this, I don't want to do that. And we've heard before about him kind of pressurizing female co-stars into on-screen nudity of some sort. Like creepy casting couch behavior, all sorts of things. Like there's all sorts of stories that we've covered in the films that we've covered, and I'm sure there's other stories for the films we've not covered, and the films I previously covered in the 90s ones, which I previously covered in my podcast. There's a lot of stories like that as well. So I mean, there's definitely a long track record of shitty behavior, shitty violent behavior towards stunt people, and shitty, kind of harassy, predatory behavior towards female co-stars.
Yeah, and the other thing we know too, this movie was for the most part was shot in Bulgaria. You'll see a few other places listed, but those other places are from the other footage that was used from other movies. So that was another piece of it, was that you get actors stuck in Bulgaria and they kind of feel stuck having to do whatever it is that Seagal wants them to do. That and it's very possible that someone like a Robert Miano would have maybe stepped in. He's someone who's got a lot of credibility, and he's someone that could have potentially said something on her behalf and would have been listened to by the producers there, so and that could have led to him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is a shame because in terms of because this movie has some pretty good character actors. Miano is probably not a name that is well known, but I feel like at this level of kind of DTV movie, he's kind of he is a great kind of character actor, and he pops up in all sorts of things. I guess in the mainstream, would he be most famous for his kind of Fast and Furious, the first Fast and Furious movie, where he's like the decoy head villain? He's not actually the head villain. Right. I don't know, but I mean, I've seen him in a lot of kind of this kind of low budget action and horror, and he's always like a solid presence. And actually, like another actor who we'll probably get to in a minute, I kind of wish there was more of him in the film, because he's great at playing he's great at playing kind of gangsters and kind of sleazy, dirty cops, and he's great at kind of certain roles. I think, and I often enjoy his performances.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And in terms of what he's most known for, I mean, his 4 box on IMDb, it's Fast and Furious, and then Donnie Brasco. I forgot about Donnie Brasco.
Oh yeah, he's in Donnie Brasco. Yeah.
So those would be his 2 big ones. And then I mean, if you watch low budget, PM entertainment movies, things like that, he's in a ton of those. He's a fun kind of character actor. Now you mentioned another name in this, and so I think I mean, I guess on your podcast you would have already. Oh no, wait, was this that movie actually came out in the 80s, didn't it? Roadhouse. It was why did I think it was 92? I'm thinking of Point Break. I'm mixing up my Swayze movies.
Yeah, no. Yeah, Roadhouse I think is 89. So
right.
I think sadly, sadly, yeah, we can't cover that on our podcast.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of films I'm like, man. I mean, there's lots of 80s films that are but there was a couple of films that I kind of thought might have been 1990 that I thought we might cover, but actually it turned out they were 89. Yeah. The other one being Tango and Cash, which was released. Which I remember this specifically because we did a Stallone season, and it was we thought about covering it because it was released on Boxing Day 1989. So and we were like, should we cover it? Just because it's so close. Yes. It's so close to being a 90s film. Yeah. It's 4 days out, and but then we didn't. We're like, no, we gotta do it. January 1st, 1990 to December 31st.
Oh man! Now, could you now? And it came out. I was going to say like if the movie came out later in the UK, but I guess that didn't really happen with the blockbusters, right? They kind of all came out at the same time.
I mean, it probably did come out later in the UK. It probably did come out in 1990. I didn't double check. I mean, like I guess that could have been the loophole about being like, well, it only came out in the States then.
Right.
It came out, but yeah, some. I don't know. It's a very mixed bag, particularly back then.
Yeah.
The kind of simultaneous release was like less common, but I think there was still some big films that got a simultaneous release. But yeah, throughout in the 80s and throughout the 90s and even into the 2000s, like the simultaneous release was less common unless it was like a massive movie. And even now, sometimes because like the way the calendar works is like in terms of like your kind of Oscar movies, you get all your Oscar movies at the tail end of the year in America.
Right.
And then like January, February are like dead months, are like kind of like for box office in America, but in the UK and over here in New Zealand, genuinely January and February, you're getting a lot of the Oscar movies that have been released in October, November, December in the States, or in the States and Canada, I guess. So January and February are not seen as like the dead months that they are in Hollywood or just in the States generally, because we're getting a lot of those Oscar movies at the start of the year. So with stuff like that's like prestige stuff or stuff that's on a slightly lower budget or whatever, there's still often like a little bit of a gap.
I never considered that before, because I wonder if that because that Captain America: Brave New World movie was released in like what around like Valentine's Day, I think, in February.
That's the kind of thing that gets a simultaneous release because it's just such a massive movie. So like those sorts of things are released across the globe at the same time, and then some surprising things get released kind of everywhere at the same time. But often you'll get a bit of a delay on some movies. Although I think it is getting closer and closer with kind of pretty much everything. But but I mean, traditionally that's the way it was. That a lot of those kind of Oscar baity movies would get released at the start of the year in the UK, and also I've noticed here as well.
Yeah, because I was thinking like those Oscar movies, if they were coming out in like January, February, if that could have potentially affected Brave New World there, in the UK, like if people were kind of like, oh, I've been hearing about this movie, I want to go see this, instead of whatever's going on with this Marvel movie. Because like you said, in America it was a dead time. It still didn't do great here either. So it might have just been
people. Yeah, I just think people just weren't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Weren't into it. I think. I don't know. I think obviously, this to another side tangent, but I think obviously with the MCU stuff, I think people have just kind of were a bit fatigued with it. And even though I don't think either did amazing at the box office, I do think that like the upcoming Marvel movies might do better, because I do think that both Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts, while they weren't the biggest hits in the world, I think they did okay as far as I'm aware. And I think it has given them more credit in the bank again. I think I know a lot of people who were kind of, including myself, who were pretty fatigued, pretty kind of tapped out on the MCU, that Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four has really brought them back into the fold, and are kind of more excited kind of going forward of being like, okay, what are they going to do? Yeah, what are they going to do with New Avengers? What are they going to do when Fantastic Four reaches the kind of the part of the MCU timeline, the main part of the multiverse, because they were obviously in the movie or in an alternative Earth, which is not really a spoiler for the movie if you've not seen it, because it's very it's established very early on that they're not on the Earth that we associate with the MCU. They're not. They're on an alternative Earth that's kind of stuck in the 60s, but also it's kind of a retro-futuristic place. But anyway. So yes, I think people are more excited again, or that is my sense of things. Maybe I could be wrong.
No, and I think I don't know how many people were clamoring for a backdoor Incredible Hulk sequel either. So I guess but,
I guess that's true. I guess that's true. I guess like there is like a kind of like I think people were kind of sideswiped by that. I mean, like watching it, I was like, because like that was amongst the least financially successful MCU movies,
right?
The Incredible Hulk movie, and also they kind of obviously when it got to the Avengers and stuff, because they swapped Edward Norton out with Mark Ruffalo. They've kind of almost gone out of their way to be like, yeah, forget that. So to kind of bring it back, and also the other thing is, there's obviously lots of Marvel movies before, but in terms of the MCU timeline, The Incredible Hulk is the second movie,
right?
Which came out it came out same year as Iron Man, 2008. So you've made this backdoor sequel to this film that came out 17 years ago. and also it's weird because you have to adjust to the fact that so Harrison Ford is playing the character that William Hurt used to play, which obviously can't play now because he passed away, and then so you're like, all right, and you're like, oh wow, okay, they brought Tim Blake Nelson back. All right, that's weird, I guess. And then also there's that thing of is it better to do it the way they did it, or is it better to just cast new people? Because it in some ways it is more confusing to I'm aware that due to his death, William Hurt can't be in the movie, but given that's the situation you're in, is it better to change everyone so it's because it is very confusing watching it of being all right, Thaddeus Ross is played by a different actor, and obviously we know that the Hulk has been a different actor for a long time, but Liv Tyler's the same and Tim Blake Nelson's the same, and you're like, okay, right. Now I'm confused because Liv Tyler's character has not been mentioned at all,
right?
And it's now she has been mentioned and now she's back in the MCU maybe, and you're like, well, but does that mean will we see her with Mark Ruffalo's Hulk at any stage? Because it feels like a poor move on his part that he's not talked about her at all at any time, even though she was the kind of great love of the character in that Incredible Hulk movie, but she's not been mentioned in 17 years, so it feels very you're kind of okay,
yeah.
So I feel. Yeah, maybe they could have just recast everybody because, but then even then, I guess, because you're still talking about a character that's not been mentioned in 17 years, and why, because they'd be basically ignoring this Incredible Hulk film for all this time, and have suddenly decided to acknowledge it, and then I guess but the movie itself did feel like we were kind of ticking off things that we had forgotten to do previously. Right. It's why? It's like somebody came into the Kevin Feige's office and was like, why have we not mentioned the island that is created at the end of Eternals in 4 years? And they were like, oh yeah, we forgot that. We should put that in the script. Yeah, right. Fuck yeah. Right, yeah, there's some fucking minerals or some shit that we're going to fight over in that fucking island. Yeah, all right, cool. And you're like, So what is this movie? Is it just taking off things like plot holes we've forgotten about?
Right, exactly. And you kind of, I feel bad for Anthony Mackie because this was his first run as Captain America, and they decided to do all of this other stuff around his. It's like the best scene in the movie is probably when he's hanging out with the old Captain. Like the guy who had taken the super
Yeah,
soldier.
that relationship, which they establish in the TV show, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think like that should be the beating heart of the movie, and those scenes are great. But there's just all sorts of other things going on that you're constantly like, oh yeah, I've forgotten about that. Yeah, right, that happened. That was a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I kind of feel like if you wanted to bring back something from the Eternals, why don't you just have Kamal Nanjiani, just his character just show up and be funny, I don't know. So we ended up on this track because I started talking about Roadhouse because of Kevin Teague, who's in this movie.
Kevin Teague, that's right. We started on Roadhouse because Kevin Teague.
Yeah.
There is. So Kevin Teague again. He plays
Max. Is that his name?
He plays Max.
Yeah.
Who is like a mafia boss? Question mark. He's like some sort of evil crime lord.
Right.
Of kind of vague origin. We don't really know. We think he's like some sort of mafioso. Later on, there is Italians and like mafia types. Like I don't know, but also there's like an Irish gang that he seems to be part of. Anyway. So we're introduced to Kevin Teague, who hires Seagal as a driver. Now Seagal is because he's trying to get out the cat burglary game, and we see the initial cat burglary, which is pretty hilarious because like he swings into a building on a zip wire that was like, I mean. These productions know that like Seagal doesn't do certain things. He doesn't do his reverse shots. He doesn't do anything where basically you can't see his face. He's not doing. So at least the production could, knowing this before filming, they know this before filming. At least they could like get somebody who is vaguely a similar body type to Seagal. Instead of just being like, oh, that guy is maybe like, yeah, he's a totally different kind of spindly guy on this zip wire, yeah.
Well, because there's a reason for it, and the reason is that scene, I believe, was ripped from The Order, a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. So that guy was doubling for Van Damme originally.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot that's one of the scenes there as well. I remembered some of the scenes. Like I know a lot of the prison establishing shots come from Undisputed. Yeah. I know there's a guy who gets thrown out a window that comes from a totally different, Frank Zagarino movie or some shit.
Never say die. Exactly.
Yes. So which it's really because at least the zip wire thing is pretty seamless. You think you're watching the same movie, whereas the guy being thrown out the window, it's like it's totally different color grading. It just looks totally different. You're like, what the fuck? Yeah,
exactly.
If you're going to cut something in from another movie, at least try and make it a bit more seamless, rather than like it being really jarringly different. Like, it's clearly this is not part of this movie.
No.
But yes, Kevin Teague. Kevin Teague is very fun. But Seagal's character Harlan, despite being like a mastermind cat burglar who can't be caught or whatever, he's like a bit of a moron because like he is convinced that this is a legitimate driving job. Like fully, like we're never kind of like hinted at that he like knew it was like bad all along. He seems to be pretty convinced it's a legitimate driving job, despite the fact that Kevin Teague reads all of his lines like a Saturday morning cartoon villain, kind of in a very kind of evil kind of way, kind of like, yes, I'm hiring you to drive, you're like, I think that you might be evil, he doesn't hide it, but he's like, this all seems all legit, which I thought was very funny because he's supposed to be this kind of mastermind. He's supposed to kind of know people and stuff like that. But no. But no, it definitely could have done with more Kevin Teague. I would have liked more Kevin Teague.
Right, because we lose him for a good chunk of the movie. But you're right. Like Seagal has this scene where he zip lines, quote unquote, into this rich drug dealer's place, and this is where it's kind of explained to us through dialogue and voiceover that Seagal is like a Rob the Rich, but Rob criminally
it's
rich.
like a Robin Hood type.
Yeah, and these two guys meet him in the and because the funny thing about, I guess, the robbery, there's this movie has so many, every scene has so many things going on with it that you could just go on, for, but like the funny thing is when he breaks it, so he zip lines down wearing like a cat burglar suit, and then when he comes back into the house, he's wearing just his normal Seagal clothes with a duffel bag, and then the alarm's going off. And he just takes his sweet time going over the alarm while it's been going off all this time, like minute or 2 minutes it's going off. And he hooks up like some little device to it, which, some numbers tick off and then suddenly the alarm stops. And it's like, that's not how alarms work, right? It's not that like the point of the alarm is to disable it before it goes off, because if it goes off for any amount of time, it's done its job. But no, in this case, because he had his little thing, suddenly the fact that it was going off for 2 minutes didn't matter. And then these other two crooks show up and like, oh, well, we're going to take the stuff from you. And they do the classic Seagal trope, right, where they put their gun too close to him and he disarms them. And then it just happens that this guy has samurai swords. And he starts like slashing and stabbing them with the samurai swords.
Yeah. I mean, this is like a kind of probably like an unsung Seagal trope that we've not really talked about. Like a lot of people that Seagal visits and stuff like that, and a lot of Seagal villains like collect antique swords. That's just a thing that happens in this movies because I don't know. Because Seagal, has certain things he wants to do. He wants to break fuckers' wrists, and he wants to do swordplay shit. So yeah, we just got to have a bunch of characters in these movies who happen to collect antique samurai swords. That's just, it just is what it is, Matt. We just got to roll with it.
Exactly. And so after he's killed these guys with the samurai swords, he's made off with all of this drug dealer's riches, crime pays. He and Mari Moro set out, and he's supposed to be going.
I do think it should be mentioned as well. This early fight scene is probably, there's a couple of good action sequences in this movie, but in terms of fight sequences, it doesn't get much better than this. We get the kind of classic, wrist breaks, the kind of classic throwing people through different furniture and stuff like that. And so this is kind of the height of the kind of what we've framed as the kind of classic Seagal slap through.
Yeah, I was thinking about it because I was trying to think. Submerged had a very lackluster fight with Gary Daniels, but it still had its.
Submerged was very light on fighting.
Exactly, because I was thinking we'd had a pretty good run of them with Seagal having good sequences throughout the movie. I think Into the Sun, Foreigner.
Into the Sun has a couple. Yeah, Foreigner has a couple.
Yeah, and so Belly of the Beast I think had a couple.
Belly of the Beast was definitely had more martial arts than a lot of the, because there's some of the films we've covered that are made, like the Mercenaries for Justice and stuff like that are very much lean on kind of gunfights, most of which aren't very impressive, and less on the martial arts. But yes, and this mainly rests on the gunfights rather than the martial arts. But at least it has at least one, and then there's he does a couple other things martial arts wise. It's quite fun in this one.
Yeah, but it's still it's like you said, this one this is kind of as good as it gets. Like you said, we don't get much better. Than
in terms of the martial art, if you're like a martial art movie fan, this is probably the highlight sequence for you.
Well, the other thing too is that when you look through the list of names in this movie, which we'll get to as they start to make their way into the film, if you went on IMDb and saw these names in a Seagal movie, you'd think, oh, this is going to be fantastic to see all these guys in this movie, and then you actually watch it and you're like, huh. So I guess not. So yeah,
I actually like, to be fair, when I saw like Robert Miano, Kevin Teague, and even like we've not talked about him yet, Nick Mancuso.
yes.
I was like, well, that's pretty good.
Hmm.
That's pretty good. That's like a solid lineup of like kind of DTV villainy. Like you know, that's a pretty that's pretty good. That's a pretty good lineup. I think we'll maybe talk more about Nick Mancuso when we get there. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I guess what we'll do. So as they're going, he meets back up with Mari Muro, and she's having more dreams, and she's essentially telling him like, I don't know whether this job that you're about to do is a good idea. And he's like, no, it's going to be a legit thing, because he meets up with Kevin Teague, and like you said, Kevin Teague is exactly the like the Saturday morning cartoon villain. Later in the movie, he uses the word jejune. That's
That's the best.
yes.
That's the most. That interaction absolutely slayed me. Yeah. Anyway.
Yes, it was so perfect. So we get to the scene where he's going to be driving an armored truck for Kevin Teague. It seems like a very simple in and out kind of deal. He thinks it'll be all right. He has a little back and forth with Miano. Miano's like, hey, you're not going to fall asleep, because Miano's the security guard working with him. Miano's like, you're not going to fall asleep. Oh, do I look tired? And then so okay, whatever. So like there's these security guards with like these metal briefcases filled with money, and Seagal's just sitting there in the armored truck, and Miano's like making all kinds of like crass misogynistic jokes, and it's like so far, good luck with that. That's they load everything in, and then the guys are like, hey, you got to sign for something, and he's like, oh sure, and then he shoots them, and then suddenly it's on, right? It's a big chase. Now this entire armored car truck chase scene is taken from the movie Top of the World, Peter Weller movie, which I don't know if you've seen that one.
No, I've not seen that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's very funny. Because like I was like, see, because I wasn't sure in terms of like what came from what necessarily. I have seen Undisputed, so I recognize the prison shots from there. And like the scene of like the guy getting thrown out the window is so jarringly clearly from another movie that I was like, I've not seen that movie, but I got it was from another movie. Yeah, no, that's a bit disappointing actually, because it's one of the few sequences I was going to give the film credit for, because
Right.
I was like, this car chase sequence is the best scene in the movie.
Right.
You've got all sorts of car carnage. You've got like police cars flipping over, exploding, whatever. It's like the most fun sequence in the movie. So like,
Right. Well, because so the action director on Top of the World was Spiro Rosatos, who's
of course,
yes.
like like someone who a name that comes up so often in your podcast.
Right. Exactly. So you can see the difference, right, when it's him doing it.
I could definitely see the difference, because the action's pretty. Yeah, the action's awesome. Because I was like, because I didn't quite clock it was from another movie, but I did definitely clock. But I was like, what, the action here? It's like way better than the rest of the film. Like it's I don't know how they couldn't capture that for the rest of the film. It turns out that because it's from another movie.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and against Spiro Rosatos, he's like, I was checking to see he didn't do Fast and Furious, because I was thinking, oh, did he do Fast and Furious with Robert Miano? He goes on to do I think it's part 5. They bring him in for part 5.
He's on part 5, and he's on most of them after that, right?
Yes, he did those. So it's an interesting thing, because he did this movie for PM Entertainment. He did a bunch of PM Entertainment movies, but he did this one called Recoil that had Chad Stahelski working with him and Darren Prescott. And so the three of them combined did most of like the big action movies of the 2010s, whether it's the Fast and Furious movies, something like Captain America: Winter Soldier, that was also Spiro Rosatos. The John Wick movies were Chad Stahelski with Darren Prescott. Deadpool, Darren Prescott. So, but yeah, at this time, that period when he did Top of the World, I'm trying to think, that would have been I can't remember when that movie came out, because I think it was a little bit after like his time with PM. But I don't actually. No, I guess he did still do some PM stuff with them too. So, Yeah, so but like you said, it looks like something that's much better. I mean, the car flips and things like that. People that watch a lot of PM would recognize. So Top of the World was '97, so he was kind of still doing PM stuff at that time as
Hmm.
well. Yeah, and of course it's shot in Las Vegas. So that's another piece of it is that that whole movie is done in Las Vegas, whereas this movie is shot in Bulgaria, but they wanted to take place in Las Vegas. So to do that, I guess they decided to use some Top of the World footage. I also don't remember that chase being as long in Top of the World. So I think they took extra footage that they maybe didn't use from Top of the World and put that in as well.
Right. Yeah. Maybe. I'm just. Yeah. Sorry. I was just I was just checking this out. I was just checking this movie out because I wasn't aware of the movie. Yeah, it looks pretty. It looks pretty good. It's like yeah, Top of the World, '97, directed by Sidney J. Fury,
Right.
starring Peter Weller, Dennis Hopper, and Tia Carrera.
Yeah.
Also featuring David Allen Greer, Kari Haruki Tagawa. And Joe Platiniano, Joey Pats is in it as well.
Pence.
Jesus Christ.
Yes.
What a cast.
Right. Peter Coyote has a short scene. Martin Cove is in it. It's interesting. I covered it on a podcast. I don't know if that one's up yet. So one of the things, I don't know if you're aware with my podcast, I started it in 2014 and then went on a hiatus. And so it looks like the one I did that I did for Top of the World is not on so what happened was like all of my ones that I made from 2014, the company the service that I was hosting them on top.
Yeah, I remember. I remember you describing what happened in previous episodes. That you you lost some and you've been like trying to re-upload them and stuff. I remember.
Yeah, and it looks like Top of the World is one of those ones, unfortunately. So I'll have to try to get it up because
I should maybe check it out. I mean, just based on that cast alone, that's I'm quite a lot of names there. Yeah,
cool. It's one of those ones that like I don't know how good it is necessarily, but all those names are a lot of fun. So it definitely works.
I'm just curious to see all those people act together. Peter Weller, Dennis Hopper, Tia Carrera, Kari Haruki Tagawa, Joey Pants.
Yes. No word too on whether Martin Cove bit anybody on set or not. No, nothing was mentioned about that, so we don't know.
No, it seems like Martin Cove's a bit of a dick, right?
Right. It's funny. Ty, who's on our podcast here, he met him at one of these, those conventions where you can get signatures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he brought him Shoot Fighter, and Cove thought it was the greatest thing ever. He was like showing everybody and talking. He's like, "Oh, these guys really know their stuff," because they're bringing up a whole bunch of direct-to-video things. So. So he was good there, but you can't base everything off of what your however long.
Yeah, I guess that's very true. People can put on different faces and different areas of their life. So I mean, it's good that you had a positive interaction.
Yeah.
But it seems like some of Martin Coe's behind the scenes behavior is not the best.
Right. Exactly. Which is interesting because he had that resurgence in his career with the whole Cobra Kai thing.
The whole Cobra Kai thing. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I know you just never know with these guys, but I said we never know. The funny thing with Seagal, when I look back at my 2007 reviews, it's like I knew kind of how Seagal was, but I didn't know the full extent of how Seagal was. And it's like going through these again, I think part of it is more has come out. Like this movie I would have reviewed 2 years after it came out. So it would have only been like, a couple of years for this kind of, these kinds of stories.
I'm definitely very much the same because when I started doing the all 90s action all the time, our first season was on Seagal. We covered all his 90s action movies. And what I was aware of was the stuff of him being delusional, him just lying about everything, much in the same way as other people, much in the same way as him and Hulk Hogan are two of history's greatest liars. Truly, it is a talent. The level of delusional lying. So I was aware of that. I was aware of because I had seen Lawman. I was aware of the cultural appropriation stuff, and I was aware of the kind of big shotting other actors, kind of like being patronizing, being like kind of pushing people around. And I was aware of the stuntman stuff. And of course, I'd heard the stories about like the John Leguizamo.
Oh, John
Story.
Leguizamo. Yeah. Yeah.
Leguizamo.
Yeah.
For some reason, I can usually say his name, but for some reason, I
That's all
couldn't
right.
there. But yeah, I'd heard his story. I'd heard the Jean LaBelle story. So I'd heard that. But I was completely unaware of like the casting couch stuff. I was completely unaware of like the sexual harassment stuff. And all and as I digged in further to like kind of still behind the scenes stories, it became more apparent of the extent of like what a terrible guy he is. Because like that stuff, that was the stuff. Because obviously, it kind of been pretty well publicized as well about like his, like the Putin stuff and like that in certain dodgy links to people like that as well. But like that was the element that I was completely unaware of pre doing the podcast, was all the kind of sleazy kind of sexual harassment stuff.
Yeah, and part of that, because you see like on the IMDb trivia, these things are coming out throughout the 2010s. That like actors that did movies with him in like that that 2000s period, they weren't really doing a lot of stuff that was getting. And of course, there's so many more outlets too for interviews and things like that now, that more people are getting interviewed. And somebody's going through their IMDb. Oh, hey, you worked with Steven Seagal, and they probably think, oh, I'm going to get a funny story. I'm going to get like a Leguizamo, or was it Keenan Ivory Waynes who told the I just read the best script ever. Oh, who wrote it? Oh, I did. Like.
Oh yeah. That's one of the famous from Glimmerman. Yeah. We talked about that.
Yeah.
So I knew all of those stories. I guess a sad indictment of the world we live in, but like. I guess when it comes to like the sexual harassment stuff as well, that a lot of those stories are just being more believed. Post post Me Too, post 2017, So I guess like we're hearing more about that now because like a lot of that stuff was actively brushed under the carpet, or kind of poo-pooed, or kind of brushed aside, or you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And like post 2017, things have changed a lot, thankfully, for the better. It's not perfect. We still got a long way to go, but yeah, I think a big sea change happened post 2017.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that combination of people asking more, oh, hey, you work with Seagal, and wanting their Keenan Ivory Wayne stories, but getting something more serious. And it's like, well, okay, I'm going to still publish this because this person wants to get this story out. I want to get this, signal boost this. And then, you get a collection of them. It just seems to be like a thing. And it's another piece about these movies too, is that, again, they're made in places like Bulgaria, and it's like, I imagine, one of the things I think with Mari Moro as an actor in this is she's older. She was born in the late 60s, so she would have been probably like in her mid 30s when she made this. A lot of the ones we were seeing, these were actors that were like, late teens, early 20s, who were going to Bulgaria to make a movie. And it's just like, and like you said, it's it's not something that we necessarily knew, but we're learning. I mean, it's like every time you watch one of these movies, it's like in the IMDb trivia, it's like if you don't see it in the IMDb trivia, it's like, okay, I mean, then you're almost like watching the movie going like, you feel like it must have happened and the story hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, that's true. And it I mean, you kind of have to like, in some ways, you kind of have to second guess, everything you watched that wasn't made like 2 seconds ago.
Right.
It's like I recently recorded an episode that won't actually come out till December, on the film Money Train.
Oh yeah.
Like there's like a sex scene in that, and apparently the sex scene wasn't in the original script when like Jennifer Lopez signed up for it, but then there was a sex scene and she wasn't entirely comfortable with it, but she did it because like she wasn't really famous yet. Like she didn't have like her big breakout year till a couple of years after that, and And then I was reading like a similar thing happened on the Oliver Stone film U-Turn, where she has like a topless scene, and again, it wasn't in the original script or whatever, and then she kind of felt kind of forced into doing the topless scene. So it's like, yeah, it does make you second guess, like all the things that you watched and maybe enjoyed as a teen of being like, oh, here's this very attractive lady getting naked or topless or whatever it is. You know, it's just like how many, you know, like how comfortable were any of these people, or you know, some people clearly were comfortable, but you know, you kind of you don't watch it now of just being like, well, this is fun, you know, like now you kind of like you have this kind of second guessing kind of like, was this in the original script? How comfortable was this lady doing this? You know, and then, you know, and sometimes you can watch things kind of guilt free of being like, you know, watching something like Poor Things, where it's like, oh, Emma Stone's like a producer on the movie. You know, she had a big say in all the nudity she did. So you can watch Emma Stone's nudity in that movie completely guilt-free of being like, because she had actual control of what happened on the set. You know, she had a big say. She was a producer on the movie. So everything she did, she signed off on. You know, like, but like you're like, well, but how often does that happen? And like, yeah, it's like it does. It makes you kind of second guess things.
Yeah, and there are a couple moments in this when we get to them that I it might be interesting to think about, like, you know, with some of the sequences. I mean, like for example, so after the armored car thing is resolved, you know, Seagal gets out of the armored car, makes a call to Mari Moro, says, you know, I'm going to be going to jail or something like that. I'm not feeling well, I guess. And he just kind of collapses, and then he gets arrested. And then we don't know where the money is. We don't, because somehow he had like in 5 minutes from when the armored car crashed, he was able to hide these big briefcases full of money somewhere. But
and spoiler alert, folks, we never learn. We never learn how we did that.
Right.
You know, you constantly think the ending is going to be some sort of Ocean's 11 style ending to show how Seagal cleverly managed to hide this money in 5 minutes. Nope.
Yeah. Right. Money that they made a clear point of showing how heavy these briefcases were. But so in that next scene though, we meet Sarah Buxton's character, who is she is one of the DEA agents, and then the other one that you mentioned, you know, famous character actor Nick Mancuso plays the other agent. Now Sarah Buxton, memory of her actually is kind of funny. When I was in England in '97, going back to like, we were talking about, you know, when I was in Scotland and England. Her show Sunset Beach was airing on, I guess, would it have been BBC 5 or 4? I don't.
Oh no, so it's not a BBC channel. It's on Channel 5.
Right.
So I don't want to hijack your moment.
No, go ahead.
But,
go ahead.
But like, yeah, it was on Channel 5, which is a separate channel.
Okay.
So Channel 5 was like, it was launched in '97 as a new channel, as a private corporation or whatever. And initially, it wasn't rolled out across the whole UK. So like, there are certain parts of Scotland, like in my hometown of Haddington, we couldn't get it unless you had Sky, unless you had a Sky satellite. We couldn't get it, but you could get it if you like lived in Edinburgh. Generally, so it was eventually it would roll out in the early 2000s that kind of everybody could get it, but like but in that initial period, and yes, Sunset Beach was on, and I remember Sunset Beach being on because at that time we would regularly visit my mum's mum, and she would watch Sunset. We would visit on a Sunday, and she would watch Sunset Beach, and on a Sunday it would be the omnibus edition. So it would be like so it would be like every episode of that week, it kind of put in one package all together. So it was like 3 hours long.
Right.
So like we would be coming in and out of the living room because, you know, we'd be playing in the garden, and then we'd come in, and then we'd talk, and then we'd play and whatever. And we'd come in and out, and it'd be on the whole afternoon. this 3 hour. So I actually watched quite a bit of Sunset Beach.
That's awesome. So when I was in London, so this would make sense because it was only in London that I saw the signs, but they had signs all over, like on benches, mostly on benches, what I remember, but also billboards, and it had Sarah Buxton, and it was written "Sunset Bitch." And I remember thinking, like, well, you wouldn't do an ad like that in America, like you wouldn't use the word bitch in the ad, but that was the ad. And of course, Sunset Beach was, was on here in America as well at that time. But yeah, so I remember seeing, and I remember there was the picture of Sarah Buxton because she was kind of the heel on the show. And so, it's one of my memories of being in England. I was like, oh, hey, I know that show. And, it was like, so I didn't realize it. So that was like, that channel had just been rolled out, Channel 5.
Yes, it was new. And so they were looking for programming. So a lot of so Channel 5 became famous for because they were kind of like a joke.
Yeah.
Because they were kind of scrambling for programming. They didn't have a lot of original programming because they just rolled out. They did have a soap that was called like Family Something Affairs, maybe. I can't remember, but like they didn't have a lot of original programming. So they took a ragtag of a lot of American shows, and then they became famous. This kind of changed, but in the initial years, what they became famous for was at night they would frequently show Shannon Tweed erotic thrillers. So they kind of became famous for being oh, this is the kind of porny channel. This is if you want to see boobs at 10 o'clock or whatever, flick over to Channel 5. There's bound to be a Shannon Tweed film or a Shannon Tweed type film on.
That's awesome. See, that's the thing. When you visit a country, and our tour director, he was this guy named George. He was in his 70s at least, maybe even older. Because I remember when we were in Edinburgh, this band, a hardcore band, Vision of Disorder, was playing. And I was like, oh, I'd like to go see them. And I remember him calling the club and just being like, oh, man, this is just, And I was just like, you know what? We're just going to go to the bars. I'm not even going to bother with it. I want to freak poor George out, And I don't know what it would have been like for me going to a hardcore band in Edinburgh in 97. But yeah, that was one of the things I remember is those bands. Because I guess it's one of those things that you recognize. Because you're like, oh, I know that show. So I guess, that's how it made sense to me. But yeah, I had no idea that, because obviously growing up in America where we had just, TV channels that exploded here. We originally only had a few channels as well. But cable had exploded here and we had all kinds of channels after that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that when I was growing up in the 90s, most people just had what we call, I can't remember, what we call terrestrial television, which is just was originally just the 4 channels, before Channel 5 came along. And generally it was only kind of more, generally most people, particularly most working class people, generally just had that. And some people who were posher or much more middle class had Sky Television, and then cable was not a big thing, but Sky was a big thing. So satellite television was a big thing. But again, it wasn't super common. Certainly amongst people I knew, it wasn't super. I knew a few people who had Sky, who had satellite dishes, but I didn't know a lot of people who had Sky. So that was that was definitely a slightly posture thing. And I guess the prices came down a little bit in the 2000s because that did become much more common for people to have satellite television, and then obviously that was all destroyed by streaming, and now nobody cares about terrestrial television or satellite or cable or whatever.
Yeah. Now, is it the same as it is here in America, where really the number one thing that I watch, like you said, we call it linear TV, I guess now, right? The what you're watching.
Linear TV, yeah.
The only thing I watch is sporting events. That's the only time. And even then, I generally stream later. I almost like the EPL I watch on Peacock well after it's happened. hockey games on the NHL. I watch them on the ESPN app. So it's like,
yeah, for big sporting events, absolutely.
yeah,
Like people will still people will still watch Wimbledon on the BBC, or when the Football World Cup is on, they will watch that on the BBC or ITV or whatever. Because there is some sort of things where certain kind of events, because the EPL is shown on Sky Sports, so you need like a satellite. So it's shown on a mixture of Sky Sports, Prime, Amazon Prime has some games, and BT Sports also have some games. So it's kind of split, but you need various packages to access the EPL. So the EPL is generally not shown on free-to-air television, on terrestrial television. But there is certain things that there's like mandates of like things have to be shown on free-to-air television. So like the World Cup, the European Championships, and certain things as well, like the FA Cup final is always on free-to-air television. So like so when I was growing up, I didn't actually watch like tons of like EPL, because like you need a Sky package for that. But what I would watch was those things that like there would often be on free to air television. Also, which also includes the Champions League, which I think is now not on free to air television. It's on some sort of cable package or whatever. But it used to be. It was always shown on ITV. For the longest time in the 90s and 2000s, it was shown on ITV. So I watched a lot of Champions League. And like there's certain rounds of the FA Cup, and the FA Cup final was always shown, and same with the Scottish stuff, and the Scottish Cup final was always shown. So I would always watch like cup games when they were on television, and internationals are always shown on free to air television as well. So if like England or Scotland are playing, generally that's on terrestrial linear television, whatever you want to call it. So yes, that's a roundup of where sports are shown in the UK for the section of listenership that are both British and interested in sports.
Right. No, because it is. Well, it is.
Let's talk about the movie, man.
Right. Sarah Buxton. I guess I that me. Yeah. That memory of her. Yes, just I still have that image of her on those ads. But yeah, there's kind of a good cop, bad cop thing while he's being so. Seagal is being interrogated, and suddenly Seagal, who allowed himself to be duped into this whole thing, and somehow got like injured and passed out, and is now in this prison here, or this interrogation room. Suddenly, he's now cool and in control. Seagal. Not sure how that happens, but he's essentially telling these people, I've got amnesia. I don't remember where the money is. Ask Max. Oh, well, Max is dead. We think, Kevin Teague's character is dead, which we don't really know if he is or isn't. It's kind of a funny thing. Like, we don't see him, like, potentially get killed. It's just, oh, Max is dead. And we're all supposed to take somebody's word for that when we know he's probably really not dead. But eventually, because Seagal doesn't cooperate, because the car chase involved people dying, he is going to prison for first-degree murder, which I don't know how that works either. Did they say first-degree or second-degree? Because I was going to say, it's not like it's premeditated, but I don't...
I don't know. I think they do say first-degree murder, but I mean, like, because they say he killed 3 cops, but right. I mean, like, he didn't intentionally kill 3 cops. They just happened to run into the car. I don't know, like... Yeah, I'm not sure, but basically, first degree, I think. Also, I think we should say that, like, I think it's supposed to be, in terms of the plotting of the movie, I think it's supposed to be kind of a surprise, or like it's supposed to be kind of a twist that Nick Mancuso is like in on it with the bad guys, and like he's corrupt or whatever. And like, if it is supposed to be a twist, I would say that maybe don't cast Nick Mancuso, because I mean, like, clearly we know, like, if you followed Seagal films, you would have seen Nick Mancuso play CIA agent Tom Breaker in both the Under Siege movies, and he's clearly a shady character. And then I mean, like, he just generally plays shady characters. He's the main villain in Rapid Fire. You know, like
Yeah.
based on my knowledge of Nick Mancuso, I was immediately like, I do not trust this character. So like, yeah, either just like make it like it's clearly he's corrupt and don't make it a twist, or make it a twist and don't cast Mancuso.
Right. Because the only outside possibility for Nick Mancuso, other than him being in on it with all the baddies, is that he is just a jerk, right? Like 'cause
Yeah,
sometimes that happens, right? That the cop is
that's
just a
true.
jerk.
That's just
But
an asshole. Yeah.
but you couldn't really see this movie going in that direction, right? It just didn't seem like it. It seemed
No,
like
it didn't. It didn't seem like it. Didn't seem like it. And Nick Mancuso generally plays kind of villains
Mhm.
or kind of corrupt officials.
Yeah.
Like if he was just going to be an asshole, you should hire like William Atherton or something like that. You know, like
exactly. Yeah. I mean, the other thing that's interesting about this is that it supposedly is shot in Bulgaria. We don't get a lot of UK names in this movie.
No. It's pretty much all American.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of. No, I didn't really notice anybody even. No, I didn't. I didn't notice because even the guy who is like, there's a character who's I think his name's Vincent, and he's played by Jamie McShane, who often plays kind of Irish characters and things, but like he is actually still American.
Yeah.
Because I remember him most from like Sons of Anarchy. He had, but I think he is actually still just American. So I think pretty much the whole cast is. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't really spot anybody. There's no kind of random British TV people that I can point at and be like, oh, yeah,
Right.
I'll tell you a little bit about that guy or woman, you know, like, there's nothing really like that.
Yeah.
So that was more surprising. This is one of the few ones where there's kind of no kind of British presence to the movie.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting how that happened, but yeah, I guess it's time for it to be a prison movie for what I guess the next 25, 30 minutes.
Something like that, kind of half-hour kind of prison movie. I think this is kind of, I mean, we just kind of go through the kind of usual kind of prison tropes, I guess.
Yes.
And like there's people being shivved, and there's all the kind of rival race gangs of like and all that, and we do a bit of that, and Treach plays a guy called Ice Cool,
Right.
And he's the leader of a gang, and he's impressed by Seagal when Seagal beats up a couple of his big boys, and then Seagal like forms an alliance with him and helps him out with some beef with the Latino gang, and which leads to a shivving, and and then we're kind of best buds. Although I do feel like when they do the escape, like it is funny to me that the rest of Treach's gang is just like, that's cool.
Right.
You like you're our leader. We're happy for you that you're going to escape with this guy you've just met. We're not mad about that at all. So there's no blowback there. So I thought that was quite funny.
Well, did you get the sense that he was taking them? I had the sense initially that they were all leaving together, and then when
Yes, no, I thought it was a bigger plan. I thought like he was like planning the escape for himself, Seagal, and the gang. Like he's like kind of like 4 or 5 guys that he always has around him. And then when the escape actually happened, and it was just Seagal and him go off in a helicopter, I was like, do the gang feel betrayed now,
Right.
or did the gang sign off on this? And they're like, yeah, it's cool. We'll let you go. We're sure you'll send somebody back for us or something. Yeah, no, I was quite thrown by that.
Yeah. So and I mean we get a lot of bad green screen here because again, it's I believe even the outside of the prison. I think that because in Top of the World, that's the deal. Is Peter Weller's character is just getting out of prison. So he was a former cop who I guess was busted on some kind of corruption thing. But we find out that he was taking the fall for some other people. But so I wonder if they even like took establishing shots of that and then green screen Treach and Seagal over the outside of the prison while they're
Yeah, I
walking
wasn't
away.
sure if they'd taken it from that or if they'd taken it from Undisputed. I think like the big scene they take from Undisputed, as far as I remember reading, is like the prison riot scene, which again is one of the better scenes. Is actually just taken from Undisputed.
Right. Well, because the other thing too, I imagine you notice as well, especially with all the '90s blockbusters that you do, that there's like a '90s blockbuster film quality that's very different from late '90s, early 2000s, or mid 2000s DTV film quality, and like those
Yeah,
scenes,
I guess that's true. I guess like it also helps that Undisputed was like I can't remember. I think Undisputed is the early 2000s, but again, it is directed by Walter Hill, so I guess you're getting a bit of a higher quality of higher caliber of direction there that is apparent. You're like, oh, this prison riot scene's pretty good, and you're like, yeah, it's from a different movie. Ah, that makes sense.
well, because even like the film, like the actual film stock seems to be like there's like
Yeah,
a look to those '90s blockbusters that direct to video movies from that time didn't have.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess and like it's a kind of similar thing to what I was saying about the guy being thrown out the window, where it's clearly a very different film stock is being used.
Yeah.
Which doesn't match well. I mean, kudos to the movie. They obviously tricked me with the zip wire scene. I didn't notice the difference in film stock in that one. But there were a couple of the other scenes that I was it did stand out to me. Yeah.
We get the prison riot where he escaped. Seagal escapes with Treach. They split up, even though Treach is a little worried because Treach is part of the reason why Treach helped him escape is that Seagal's going to quote let him get his beak wet, close quote. Essentially, get him some of the money that Seagal has hidden wherever he has hidden in the 5 minutes that he had to hide it. It's somewhere. And so they split up. He meets up with Mari Moro. They have like a safe house somewhere where he's in bed in a sweatshirt again. Then they go to this bar where
is it like I can't remember. I get confused at this point. Like when he meets up with Mari Moro, is that the scene where the supernatural thing comes back?
I think so.
Like
yeah.
And then there's like the painting on the floor.
Right. Yes, that's
it's
right.
Like,
yes.
And you're like, oh, and you're like, and there's a suggestion that the painting on the floor was not there the night before, and they woke up in the morning and it's an elaborate painting on the floor that's kind of similar to a painting we see at the start of the movie, where Seagal is like, oh, where'd this painting come from? And she was like, I saw it in a dream. Then I walked past the shop and I saw it, and I was like, well, that's karma. So I gotta get it. And you're like, okay, we'll just accept that as a thing. So there is this kind of suggestion, this supernatural suggestion that this, like painting was not on the floor when they went to bed, and it is when they woke up because they're kind of freaked out by it. And then they're like, oh, it's a protective symbol, and you're like, is it? Are you going to give any more detail on that? No. We're going to the next scene. And you're like, thanks, movie. You're really trying to be supernatural sometimes, but you're not really giving us anything. And like nothing. And then like the funny thing is, like, Seagal like never mentions this to other characters. They're never like, he only just has these conversations with Mari Moro's character, and he never like is like, you know what, the weirdest thing happened to me. I went to bed, there was nothing on the floor. I woke up, there is a painting on the floor. Apparently it's a protective symbol, I'm told. And he never mentions that to like Treach or anything, so Treach can be like, what the fuck, dude? And then maybe we could get some further elaborate, but no. So the rest of the movie is entirely non-supernatural at all.
Right.
But we just get these random scenes. Yeah. It's very strange.
No, you're right. Because then we get these moments with him and Treach in the car where there's supposed to be some kind of banter between them.
Oh, these are the worst. I mean, they're hilarious.
Right.
But like, Seagal and his whole culture appropriation thing, and like how he has to talk in this kind of vaguely Cajun but vaguely black accent, and he has to do the thing, and and he has to have some sort of like racial banter, and then the worst is like they go to a guy, they go to like take a guy out, and like they do like this kind of back and forth. I don't know if it's improvised or what, but they do this kind of back and forth prison rape banter, which is just the worst. Actually, that is not even funny. Like that, like it's just a trudge to get through. You're like, how long is this scene going to go on? Are they going to make another prison rape joke? Yes, they are. Oh, fuck me.
Exactly. And, one of the things we find out is that Treach, he didn't appreciate the way Seagal treated him on set. One of the stories is that he apparently flew in Gary Daniels to have Gary Daniels do like legitimate martial arts demonstrations, which I guess that would have really stung Seagal deep, because that's something that Seagal likes to do. He likes to do those demonstrations and stuff. But then the other person that he brought in supposedly was feeding stray cats, and Seagal's not a fan of cats. Which
apparently I read that as well, which is funny because like on YouTube you can watch like a little 14-minute making of Today You Die video, like behind the scenes video, and like I don't know how much these people are getting paid, because like they're obviously being bribed, because like there's a bunch of people, they're talking about how dedicated Seagal is, how single-minded he is, how tough he is, how he's across everything. He produces things. He knows how to write and direct, and like he knows the camera angles, and he knows how to act, and there's a bunch of people bigging up. And there's a bit at the start of the doc, this mini behind the scenes doc, that Treach is like, I used to watch all sorts of Seagal movies, and I'm like a kind of like a bit of a Seagal groupie here. Right. And you're like, and then I read that trivia, and I was like, how much were you bribed to say that? Right. Like what it like, because like the funny thing about, and I've watched a couple of these while we've been doing this, you can check them out on YouTube. There is a couple of these behind the scenes documentaries, and they're always the same. They always big up Seagal, and then like Seagal gets to be like full humble of like, you guys, and and they're always the same, and they're always talking directly to camera as if they have been kidnapped, right. and they are reading their lines off camera. I've just been like, and I would say that Seagal is maybe the toughest and greatest man I've ever met. Is that what you want me to say? Is what yeah? Can I? Am I okay to go now? I've said the thing. Can I leave? Right. Yes. Thank you. No, you're That's always the way of it. It's like, it's so weird.
It's actually really good to know that these are on YouTube, because I used to, when I reviewed these originally, I was getting the disc from Netflix, and so I would watch them on with the DVD. But now that I do them on streaming, because I honestly, I don't think I bought a single Seagal movie. I don't think I like Dolph. I have a whole collection of Dolph movies from like, I think One in the Chamber on, to whenever, Rocky IV or something like that. But like Seagal, I never really bought these direct-to-video movies. I would always just rent them. So it is cool to know that, because I know the Mercenary for Justice one's another one like this, where it's just people saying how great he is, and it's just like you read the behind the scenes.
There is a couple of them, and they always have the same vibe.
Yeah,
of everybody has been corralled to say this.
Right.
They're either being bribed or they're being threatened by violence. It's one of the two, man.
Well, because the one thing I was wondering about with Treach is that, when he's doing his lines, I don't think a lot of his lines were I think he ad-libbed a lot of stuff, especially with a lot of the...
Seems that way. I'm guessing, it seemed like a lot of it, particularly the kind of like cringe racial banter that they get into while they're driving about, and particularly like the kind of, there's certain things like the driving Miss Daisy line and things like that, I definitely think a lot of that seems improvise on the fly kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think he also, recognizing Seagal doing the whole appropriation thing, he uses terms that Seagal wouldn't know. I think, like he referred to the money as Skrilla at one point. I think there's a few terms like
Yeah,
that he uses.
he does actually mention that, and he does briefly mention that in the behind the scenes.
Oh, he does, yeah.
Like he does like mention that, like, I mean, obviously this is a very white production,
yeah,
and he mentioned in the original script there were certain things that fell off to him, and he tried to make it a little bit more authentic, kind of more authentically black, I guess. Yes, he does briefly mention that in the little mini doc. Like I say, it's only about 14 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Because I wonder, like, if he was using terms too that Seagal wouldn't know, to kind of make Seagal like kind of remind him that, like, hey, listen, you're not down. You're not like this is appropriative. Yeah. It's not appreciative, I guess, or it's like it's not you're not authentic, I guess is probably the better way to say it. It's appropriative. And so, yeah, I wonder, because the back and forth with them, and I think the movie was trying to capture the exit wounds feel. Which I don't remember. Do you remember DMX and Seagal having like jokey banter back and forth? I don't know. Maybe it was more the other one, right? The Ja Rule one.
Yeah, I think there was more of that in Half Past Dead.
Yeah,
but like, I think, like, because Exit Wounds was like Seagal's last, kind of solo success. Yeah. I think they tried to replicate the formula of that a couple of times, but again, I don't really remember a massive amount of like jokey banter with them, with DMX necessarily, because there's like more. No, I don't remember a massive amount of that.
No,
because there's definitely like most of the jokey banter in that movie comes from the what's his name?
I know who you're talking about, but
yeah, no, I'll get it. We'll move on. If I remember it, I remember it.
Yeah, because
yes, it's the anger management stuff with Tom Arnold.
That's right, Tom Arnold. That's right. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Where he's going to like the anger management stuff, and or did he end up? I think he's enforced to go to anger management, I think.
Right.
And then he meets Tom Arnold in the anger management class. And most of the jokiness comes from that subplot.
Yeah.
And like him bantering with Tom Arnold. There's not a lot of kind of like this kind of jokey. And I think Today You Die as well, it is very much trying to, I think it's very much like a lot of movies at this time, I guess, is trying to do the kind of like Tarantino-esque dialogue a little bit, or like definitely in that wheelhouse of trying to be maybe a little bit Tarantino, maybe a little bit Shane Black. I think it's trying to do that, but it just can't pull it off.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's one of the things about Treach. Treach did an Art of War sequel. He did part 3 where he's playing Wesley Snipes' character, and that it didn't come off. It's like there's a kind of a lane for Treach where he works. I think another one of these things I think is that there's a sense that like, well, if LL Cool J can act, and Ice Cube can act, and Tupac was like kind of another level. He was kind of like almost like a David Bowie, like, could do all kinds of different types of media. But there's like a sense like, oh, well, if a few rappers can act, they all can, and no, not everybody who raps is good at acting. But Treach has his moments. I think like here, he kind of, he's not working with the best material.
I think like maybe partly because of like his, I don't think there's like, I guess like there's certain rappers turned actors have like a thing, and like Treach kind of seems like a kind of guy, maybe partly based on his stature, who is like a bit better as like a sidekick rather than or like or a wingman, and rather than like a kind of like main guy. I mean, part of for example, like part of LL Cool J's thing is that like he's a unit.
Yes.
Like he's like a big guy. Like and LL Cool J likes you to know he is a unit because he always wears a top that is 2 sizes too small.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I watched Deep Blue Sea recently. I hadn't seen it in its entirety before. It had always been one of those ones I'd seen on TV, like bits and pieces of. And it is amazing when you see LL Cool J in that movie and you compare him to like Thomas Jane, and I think part of the thing is I'm used to old Thomas Jane or more mature Thomas Jane, and young Thomas Jane just wasn't really working for me too much in that movie. But it's like LL Cool J feels like he should be, the hero of that movie.
But like that, I mean, like that is like his common thing.
Yeah.
Like it's like so sometimes like I watch LL Cool J and I'm like, how'd you even get into that thing? It looks like that. Looks like that top has been sprayed onto you, like
right. He has
like,
no shame.
Like LL Cool J is like a man with a 6-pack who wants you to know that he has a 6-pack, and that is why he will wear the tightest top imaginable.
I remember. So one of the big clips from him growing up was he did MTV Unplugged. I don't know if you ever saw this when he did "Mama Said Knock You Out" on MTV Unplugged, and he's like doing this whole like doing this chant, leave that crack alone. And when he lifts up his arms, he's got like it's like almost like tons of like sweat underneath his armpits, and it just like looks ridiculous. But so I guess maybe he felt like he's got to wear something underneath his top, after that incident. But yeah.
And I mean, like, don't get me wrong, you can be like a smaller action star. I mean, obviously Tom Cruise is tiny or whatever, but like and also like, Ice Cube is like a small guy, but like Ice Cube's thing is like he overcomes like being a small guy by just having like a phenomenal amount of rage.
Yes.
Like just kind of the type of anger that you're like, I don't care how small he is. They're like, I don't want to fuck with that.
Exactly.
You gotta have a thing. If you are smaller in stature, like myself, you gotta have a thing.
Yeah.
And that's Ice Cube's thing. It's just like, and he does that kind of that kind of growly thing as well, which is kind of like, you're always like, like where he lifts up his lip and snarls, and you're like, yeah, all right.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
You're fucking trouble there.
yes, exactly. I think of like Ghost of Mars or something like that. Yeah.
He does that repeatedly.
Yeah, and I guess with a movie like this, they're not probably going to get anybody of that level. And Treach probably, like he said,
that's true.
Yeah, Treach was excited to work with Seagal and then learn the truth, as so many other people do. when they get into those movies. It's something else. I wonder if like as these movies were getting made, because in this period here, I mean, again, Exit Wounds comes out in 2001. And this movie comes out in 2005. So, 4 years is not a long period of time between a really big hit and another movie. So, if you're Treach, you're probably thinking like, oh, this is great. And if you're Sarah Buxton, you're thinking this is great. And, even maybe Kevin Teague and, Nick Mancuso and Robert Miano. And then you get on set and you're like, why didn't anybody tell me about this? But then you assume that those people then go and tell other people. And so, it seems like I wonder if as the 2000s go on, it gets harder and harder to get people that want to work with Seagal.
I think that's absolutely true. Although I'm even surprised that Mancuso's here, because I'm like, obviously he's in Under, but then I guess he doesn't really have any scenes with Seagal in Under Siege 1 and 2. Because, like, the way those kind of movies are kind of set up, you're always, getting this split perspective of, like, what's happening in the actual action and what's happening in the background at FBI headquarters or whatever. So he's always with... So maybe, actually, he didn't even really meet Seagal, because, like, now I think about it, he's like... I don't think he ever is in the same scene with him. Like, I think he's always, just in the kind of, we just constantly see him in meeting rooms in like these kind of CIA, FBI, kind of military headquarters or whatever.
Right. And I mean, to be honest, when you look at this movie, how often does he do a scene with Seagal in this movie even, right? And,
a couple of times, I guess, like in the interrogation sequence, and then I guess maybe not until the end.
But even with those,
so maybe he only has like the 2 scenes, I guess.
but even those, it's like one thing I've learned with Seagal is if people aren't in the same shot, they may not have done the scenes together. And so I wonder too, like how many.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is true because I guess in the interrogation sequence, we don't get like a wide shot of the 3 people in the room. We're just getting kind of the camera turning to Seagal, the camera turning back to Sarah Buxton and Mancuso. So I don't know. Yeah, you're right. Maybe they didn't. And it's the same in the warehouse scene at the end.
right.
He's got the gun. He's standing next to Sarah Buxton. Then it cuts back to Seagal. Yeah. So I guess we don't. They're in the same scene, but yeah, you're right. Did they film it together? Who knows?
No, exactly. I know. Now, speaking of the warehouse scene, we get an intermediate warehouse scene that has a whole bunch of names in it.
So I need to ask you something at this point, right?
Yes.
So they get a guy. Seagal threatens to kill him unless he doesn't give him the information. Seagal then just kills him anyway because he's a dick.
Right, exactly.
And he gave him the information. He blows up the car. Now, with the Kevin T character, which we get later on, I understand his position in things. And then the Vincent character, who we visit at his house, played by Jamie McShane, that comes later. But he was in the original meeting with Seagal when Seagal was being hired as a driver. So I know his place in things. But this fucking scene, I don't know any of these characters. I don't know why we're having this meeting between the Dragons, who are an Asian gang, and this Italian gang. I don't know. I don't know who they are. Was this Garrett guy in the original meeting? I don't remember him in the original meeting when he was hired as a driver. The Garrett, I think, is the guy who head ends up in the vice.
Right.
So, like, does any of this make any sense to you? This action sequence, none of it. I was like, maybe I fell asleep briefly, and like there was more kind of. Yeah, did any of this make sense to you, this sequence?
No, so here's the thing, is that there's that scene at the end where Seagal puts the Garrett guy, so Garrett is played by Lawrence Turner, he puts his head in a vice, and that is the only time that Seagal interacts with anybody else that's in this scene. And it made me wonder if this scene was shot for a movie that didn't end up happening.
I don't know, because I was like, how do any of these characters pertain to this story? I don't know where the Asian gang have come from.
Right.
I don't know where the other guy, and we just get introduced to this Garrett guy. He's talking about like changing nappies or something, he he's running a criminal enterprise. He can't be like across everything, He's clearly, he's trying to be a good dad. He's like, I've done this before, but I can't be there right now. I can't do everything. He's got drug deals to do. The guy's got a lot on his plate.
Right.
But yeah, no, none of these characters. I was like, where have all these characters come from? Treach doesn't seem to know them. Seagal doesn't really seem to know them. Us as a viewer has not been introduced to them previously. And then they all just die. Right. They all just die in the shootout. And we're like, yeah, that's over. But then they try and tie it in because he interrogates that Garrett guy by putting his head in the vice. And then he's like, oh, so he's vaguely connected to Max. But we didn't really establish that. It was such a weird scene to me.
Yeah, I wonder if there was a movie. So I mean, one of the things, we get a whole bunch of names in this movie that are only in it for this sequence. We get Jerry Trimble.
That's right. I was like, when he's just like a random gang member. Yeah, right. He gets 2 lines.
Yes. We get Cara the Heat Parisian. 2000. You're talking about early, mid 2000s UFC. Yeah. Mid-2000s. We get him. Yeah. We get James Liu. Everybody knows James Liu from what any number of things that he does. And there's this whole back and forth between these gangs where they just yell out a bunch of racial slurs and then they have a shootout. And I wonder if it was like they were going to make some movie, some like gangster, this like some kind of maybe like East versus West kind of, gang type movie. They get that scene out of the way and then realize, oh, we don't have the funding for it anymore. All right, we'll scrap this. And it's like, well, what are we going to do with this footage here? Let's put it in a Seagal movie. Well, we got to get somebody back. How can we tie them together? Oh, Lawrence Turner. Let's call him back in, dress him up so he looks like he did in that movie. I mean, it was the only explanation, because this scene, I mean, it's supposed to be this idea that he's supposed to be getting more information through this scene, but none of this stuff none of it makes any sense, except for if it's that, if they were, like, we got to do something to get our money's worth out of this scene. I don't know. I have no idea. It's just sort of there, but we get these names, so Jerry Trimble gets another tag on the site. James Liu gets another tag on the site. I didn't tag Carl the Heat Parisian, but it was like, just seeing him, I was like, oh, Carl the Heat Parisian, what's going on here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. A name that people will remember if they were into the UFC at that time.
Yeah.
But probably won't remember if they're into the UFC at any other time.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
So it's just one of those weird random names. And then that scene didn't make any sense. And then we get more random banter. We get that scene where we get more. Geez, these driving sequences.
Yes.
Then we get more random banter. We get the driving Miss Daisy reference, which I'm pretty sure is a reused joke from Bad Boys.
Right.
And then like Seagal tells this terrible joke ? Where he clearly amuses himself, because he gives himself a wry smile, because he gives this line where he's like, "Yeah, man, we're not ex-cons, we're more like current cons." Yes. And then Treach doesn't laugh, but Seagal smiles to himself like, "That's the funniest line I've said today." I don't know.
Yeah, the whole thing, you're just like, what is going? Right? It's the fact that one, the movie has changed into three different things, right? It's a heist thing. It's a prison thing. Now it's some kind of buddy, like this, like not a buddy cop, like I said, a buddy con kind of thing. It's a gangland shootout kind of thing. And then
also apparently it's a supernatural horror.
That was what I was forgetting. It was the supernatural part, which we haven't seen Mari Morrow in a while, right? Like every once in a while he goes back to that safe house and he hangs out with her for 5 minutes, and then he comes and again, like you said,
more supernatural shit. But again, it doesn't touch the rest of the movie until we get to the final Kevin Teague scene.
Yeah. So now is the next scene when he goes to the mansion and he knocks out Randy Couture, or do they set up the bombs first? Because they set up a whole bunch of bombs in this place, don't they?
Yes, that is true. Yes, that's true. We get like a random, like in between times, we get a random meetup with Agent Knowles.
Oh, that's right, at the bar.
Where at the bar where like Seagal's character Harlan tries to convince her that Max is still alive. And then she is going to go off on her little mini side quest to look into the connection between Max and Agent Saunders, who is the Nick Mancuso character. Yes, so we get that. So that's the only thing that I took note of in between them, him then going for his little house visit to beat up Randy Couture. Again, I think like another line that Seagal was very pleased with himself was Randy Couture opens the door and says something like, "Who are you?" or "Where are you from?" or whatever. And then Seagal says, "I'm from Girl Scouts of America," and then beats him up. Which I think Seagal thought was just a knockout line.
Right, exactly. Well, the other thing I completely forgot is when Agent Knowles is investigating stuff at the DEA office, we get like these like 20-something-year-old interns who are playing DEA agents. And it's like you get these two young women who have like the badge for the necklace. Yeah. And then you've got the kid behind this young man who's like behind the desk, like telling her, telling Sarah Buxton, like, "Oh, you got me looking into stuff and it leads back to Saunders, and stuff like that." And it's like, that kind of came out of nowhere. And then, like you said, we then go to the mansion where Randy Couture. The one thing I would have to say is an '05 Randy Couture, because that was when he was dominating the light heavyweight division. I think, right? I think that was his reign before Chuck Liddell learned a takedown defense and took the belt from him.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think like it's around the same time as Chuck Liddell
Right.
won the belt from him.
That's right.
So like, and maybe even that had happened just before this film came out or whatever.
That's right, because I went to UFC 55 in 2005, and Chuck Liddell was the champion at that time. So we saw
2005 was that was Chuck's year. His big year where he became the dominant light heavyweight for a little bit.
Yeah, because he just suddenly develops this takedown defense where Randy Couture couldn't get him in a double leg takedown, and it was just like, and he talked about being knocked out because he'd never been knocked out before. He said like that's like the worst feeling. It's like you're standing 1 second and the next second you're laying on the ground and you don't know how you got there. I've never heard anybody describe being knocked out like that before. He was like that frank about Randy Couture. Was that because once he couldn't take down Liddell knocked him out, But yeah, you get the sense again. I have to kind of remind myself like this is not the Randy Couture who does a ton of direct-to-video movies now and is a direct-to-video name in his own right. This is still has a UFC career. Randy Couture who probably thought it was a cool thing to get knocked out by Seagal in a movie, right? Like almost like, hey, it's like a dream come true kind of thing. Seagal would have still been a big enough name that would have had cachet for him. And so when I saw the scene in '07, I was like, oh, I want to see the two of them fight. But there's no way the two of them could have fought because, how would you buy Randy Couture in like a legitimate like one-on-one fight with Seagal? You'd be like, Randy Couture's just going to just take him down and ground and pound him, and there's nothing Seagal can do about it.
That's true. And I guess like there's, there would be no, I guess, in a kind of marketing standpoint, there would be no call for that.
Right.
Because like, I guess, because at that time, in 2005, that's that kind of period, UFC was still kind of bubbling under. It's not what it was now because like 2005 was actually like a pivotal year for the UFC because like 2005 is when Chuck becomes a superstar. 2005 is the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. So this is the UFC just making like a big mainstream breakthrough. Because like up until this point, there'd been all the kind of things of like people criticizing it, calling it human cockfighting. It's not a sport. John McCain was against it. So it was and it was on. A number of times in that early 2000 period, UFC was on the brink of bankruptcy.
Right.
And like The Ultimate Fighter really saved the company on a financial standpoint. So the UFC stars weren't as big as they are now. They weren't as famous as they are now. So to people like us who watched MMA, like Randy's a big name, but like Randy didn't really become a big name in the mainstream until like Expendables in like 2010, really.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Yeah, because thinking about the Ultimate Fighter show, like I remember the buddy that I went to see UFC 55 with, he didn't see the show at all. So when Forrest Griffin was fighting Elvis Sinisek on that card, my buddy was like, "Oh, I'm going to put some money down on Elvis Sinisek." I was like, "He's not going to win against Forrest Griffin." And he's like, "Really? Who's Forrest Griffin? I don't, and the whole point of Elvis Sinisek at that time is he was like a gatekeeper guy that like, he was there to lose to bigger names, the big people.
There were certain guys like that who were just like, who were like decent, but like, and could beat, kind of rubbish fighters. But like, if you were like an up and coming fighter, you would have to like, get through them to get to the next, get to kind of contender level. I remember there is like another guy I always think about that is there was a period where if you were a heavyweight, one of the milestones that you would have to tick off is you would have to beat Heath Herring.
Yes. Yes. I remember that. Yes. Some of the like Tim Sylvian, I think I remember.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
coming
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be on your road to contendership. It'd be like, oh, I gotta get through Heath Herring, you know,
Yes.
like.
Right, that's right. Yes, because Tim Sylvian was from Maine, and so it was a big deal. But then, I mean, yeah, he also had trouble with Andre the Pitbull Orlovsky, and so yeah. But yeah, it's kind of a funny thing when you watch these movies now, because you're right. Like at the time, even for me in '07, the UFC, because you said the '05 was such a pivotal year for the UFC, that when I would have watched this 2 years later, Randy Couture and the UFC were in such a different place even then, 2 years later, that I'm watching it going like, why is this not a bigger fight? But like you said, in '05, Randy Couture is just there to be a tough guy. He's not there to be Randy
Yeah,
Couture.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think like '07's pretty big as well, actually, because I think it's either '07 or '08. No, I think it's '07 is when Pride goes bankrupt.
Yes.
The UFC buy them over, and then like all the like Rampage Jackson, Dan Henderson, Big Nog, Little Nog, like they all come over from Pride, and that's like the start of UFC buying over the MMA universe kind of thing.
That's right. Because I remember, because remember, yeah, Rampage wasn't in the UFC that long before he started making movies, and he kind of, because I remember Dana White was not happy that he made the A-Team movie.
Oh, the A-Team movie, and
Yeah.
that was 2010, big
Yes.
year. 2010, big year for Rampage Jackson, big year for Randy Couture.
Right, exactly, yeah, and I mean, at that time too, I think the interesting thing, because WWE did a better job of sort of like with The Rock, for example, where it was like he was making movies as a movie star, but he still had these ties to the WWE, that he would do events and things like that. Whereas with the UFC guys, it was like Dana White was treating them so poorly. That like they were making, they had to make money however they could make it. So I guess at this point, now that we've done the mansion sequence, I guess it's time for the jejune scene, for lack of a better term. I don't know.
Yes, that's true. I guess the only thing we should say about the mansion sequence in terms of joining the dots of the plot is like he beats up a few people, and then he gets to the Vincent character, the Jamie McShane character, and he roughs him up, and that's where he finds out where Max's location is.
Right.
And then before we meet up with Max, he sets up a variety of explosives ahead of time, and then we're into the jejune sequence.
I mean, we get it's sort of like this underground bunker kind of play. I don't know is that what it was, an underground bunker? It was like, I don't know where they.
So like I don't actually know, but it is like kind of like, so like again, all of this is weird. So like Max, like when we first meet Max, he seems like just your stereotypical kind of dodgy mafioso type, like some sort of criminal overlord, some sort of gangster. Like he doesn't seem anything weirder than that.
Right.
But then we get some suggestion in the interrogation sequence. They mention something about him being into black magic, and you're like, we didn't know that. Okay, there was no indication of that. He never seemed like a kind of he was into that or anything. He didn't have any satanic paintings on the wall or anything. Fine, he's into black magic. And then there's a scene where Jada says that he's like not of this earth, or whatever. And then you're like, okay, that's weird. But like, fine. And then he's found in this underground bunker. He's playing piano. The room is covered in candles. He's like the Phantom of the fucking Opera. Like, right. I don't know. Like, and you're like, oh yeah, now I guess I get it now. Like, there was none of that in the opening scene. He just like had a stereotypical sleazy, gangster office that he was out of. He didn't have any kind of melodramatic satanic layer that he apparently has now. So yeah. And then we get a bit of we get a very strange moment where he's playing piano Seagal is like, I like the music, and then Max is like, I'm glad you appreciate the music. And you're like, what are we doing here? Like, what is happening in the movie now?
Right. And then he's got pictures of, I think, who ends up being Chloe Grace Moretz. And
Yes.
yeah. And I don't understand why he had pictures of her. Was he like
No.
right?
No. It's like, so what happens is, like, again, is Chloe Grace Moretz some sort of supernatural presence? Maybe. We don't know. Because, like, Chloe Grace Moretz's presence in this movie is she is in a picture in one of Jada's dreams.
Yeah.
And then she is in a picture in this Maxie's underground satanic lair, whatever. And then we briefly see her like being wheeled in a wheelchair outside the hospital. Oh, we should have explained that. There's this children's hospital that's going out of business.
Right.
That becomes important right at the end of the movie. Because as Seagal is transitioning from being cat burglar to legit driver, like he drives past this children's hospital that's going out of business, and he looks all sad, like, oh man, if only I was still a cat burglar, I totally could have helped out. So yeah. Anyway, so that's part of the movie. So Jay's driving by, and then she's in. But again, you're like, okay, so is Max related to Chloe Moretz's character? How does why would Jada dream about her? Like, or is Chloe Grace Moretz like some sort of like angel, or like, I don't know, or like like some sort of supernatural spirit or something? Like, is that it? Is it more magical? So yes, it's very confusing.
Yeah. And when we get to the very end of the movie, she has a scene. If you go on the IMDb page of this, you'll see a picture of it where he hugs her, and she is really uncomfortable with it. Like she's uncomfortable with anybody in the scene. Like it's like it's her first role.
She doesn't. So yeah. To give context, I guess so. This is 2005. So like Chloe Grace Moretz is like 8 years old or something, right. And like that scene at the end where she's hugged by Seagal, and then she's also kind of like I think she's also hugged by Agent Knowles,
right?
And,
yes,
like,
Sarah Buxton, yeah.
And she's generally being fussed over, and you can just kind of see in the scene of it's like she just kind of keeps looking up at people as if to kind of say in their eyes, why is any of this happening?
That's exactly that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like she looks remarkably uncomfortable. Like almost, you could just imagine, like, as soon as it cut was called, she like ran off the set. Exactly. And like, and her parents speeded away.
Exactly.
And never looked back. And we don't talk about that day.
No, right, exactly. And it's like, again, like you said, she was, and I wonder if part of that was maybe that like they wanted to have a bigger part for her, and then they see her on set with everybody, and she's just not really feeling it with anybody on that set. She wasn't interested.
She seems real awkward with kind of everybody. Yeah.
So they were just like, okay, maybe we'll just cut that out. But so now, after the Teague back and forth, the pictures of Chloe Grace Moretz, like you said, she's only 8 years old. Kevin Teague's character realizes that the whole conversation is getting a little on the banal side, and he says, "This is all getting to be a little bit jejune." And then Seagal makes a joke about it being jejune, like for him using the word jejune. For me, it was the whole movie, right? It can be wrapped up in that one Kevin Teague line of like, "This is all getting to be a bit jejune."
It is all getting to be a bit jejune.
Yeah.
And then because they also have this line about Seagal says something about you're not a master of illusion, you're a master con or something.
Yeah.
And a master con artist. You're just fooling people into thinking you're like devilish or because like Max also says like I've got the devil inside me. Right. Or something like that. he says that, and you expect Kevin Teague at this point, like now he's been established as the master of the black arts. You expect him to do some sort of, I don't know, like disappear in smoke, or like do something, it's suddenly to have some magic powers that Seagal's suddenly bleeding out of his eyes or something, anything, but no, nothing happens. He's just like, oh yeah, I'm off now, and he just runs away to his helicopter, and he gets some other guy to try and kill Seagal, and then we do the Indiana Jones bit where this guy does like several backflips and all that, and then Seagal just shoots him, and then we just blow up Max's helicopter, and we're like, well, what the fuck? We've been building the whole movie up to this final confrontation, and we expect, at this stage, we now expect Max to do some dastardly black magic shit, and he just fails completely, and now he's dead, and you're like, well, fuck.
Right. Well, and the guy who comes in who does all the flips and stuff, his name is Bartholomew, right? And we know that because Kevin T calls me. He's like, "Come on, Bartholomew," and you're like, "Wait, what? What Bartholomew?" And then, like you said, he just shoots him. He did, like you said, it's the Indiana Jones thing. And then I guess like he had a bomb. I'm trying to remember how he blew up he had a bomb.
So yes. Yeah. He set up, he like attached a bomb to the bottom of the helicopter before he came into the meeting, before he entered the underground bunker warehouse, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So then he just like takes out the little kind of like detonator and then explodes the helicopter.
Yeah. And that's Kevin Teague. That's
Kevin Teague. Done.
that's your Kevin Teague in this movie. So now the only thing left is the big final warehouse thing, where we get the big reveal that, like you said, was not much of a big reveal with Nick Mancuso. Randy Couture's back because he's one of Vincent's men, and they're all thinking they're getting the money from Seagal. And one of my favorite things is that Seagal is acting like he's completely unarmed, and he's got this this clear tarp hanging up behind him that is clearly hiding something. And I love how it's hiding that he has a machine gun behind there. And I love how everybody got guns on him, and they just sit there and wait while he just messes with this tarp thing, and then pulls out a gun and starts shooting them.
Everybody's so blinded by the cash and just assumes it's the cash behind the tarp.
Yeah.
Like everybody's like, that's got to be the money, right?
Right.
And everybody falls for that. I guess like we got to mention. I mean, we should always mention when somebody in the movie says the title of the movie.
Right, yes.
Treach does say the title of the movie. He like basically gets shot in the shoulder. Then Vincent is run out of bullets, and then he's like, "Oh, run out of juice, huh?" And then he says, "Today you die, motherfucker!" And then shoots him several times, and you're like, the title has been said. Yes. Well
do you wonder if maybe Treach just said that line, and then possibly the Millennium guys heard that and said, "Hey, that's a good title for this movie."
That works. They had a working title, but they were like, I'll throw that
out. Right. So we got that. Then we get Sarah Buxton, who ends up like a very awkward scene with the confrontation with Nick Mancuso, where he's got her at gunpoint, and she does the most awkward brushing a gun in her face away from her and walking away that I think I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, that's true. That does feel kind of. And like, I think what makes it also weird is like, there's like, once she like brushes it off, there's no real much of a follow up from Nick Mancuso. He doesn't like try and like take her down in the like, you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
Like he just like kind of like, oh well, that didn't work. Anyway, the money.
Exactly. And then he does get her at gunpoint, and that's when Seagal shows up and just plants him one right between the eyes, which I gotta say, for the deaths in this movie, that was a fun death. But
that was pretty fun death.
Yeah,
Mancuso sells that well.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. But and then then it's big shootout. Everybody's shooting. Obviously, Vincent dies. Is killed by Treach, as we described. Everybody gets shot up, and then we do the classic kind of like coolly walking away from an explosion in the background, because um, clearly Seagal had set up explosives in the entire warehouse,
Right.
like a demolition crew, and and then just sets off a detonator, and it wipes out the entire warehouse.
Right. Well, what I love too is that I think Treach was helping him set up the explosives, and then when they leave, Seagal's like, "I always love the cherry on top," and he's like, "What are you talking about?" And it's like, you know what he's talking. You helped him set up. What do you think he's talking about? You know?
That's true. That's true. There is a sequence where Treach is helping out and and setting up explosives himself. So it is funny that he's like, "Huh? What do you mean?"
Exactly.
You're like, that thing that we did earlier, literally, just a couple hours ago. Oh yeah, right. The explosive thing. Oh yeah, that makes sense.
That's right. That's right. So once all of that's blown up, now we have our scene at the hospital, and this is another one of these ones I was thinking about in terms of Seagal's potential undue influence on actors in the film, because Mari Morrow going to this children's hospital is wearing the most probably inappropriate low-cut shirt that she could be wearing to this event. And I do kind of wonder if she was like, I should be wearing this to this event. And Seagal's like, no, you need to wear this shirt. And it's like, I don't think she would have, I don't know. It's like one of those things you question now after knowing how these movies work.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I think yeah, it's always kind of the same with these. Always kind of the same with these things. So I don't know. It probably was like a kind of either a Seagal's decision or one of the other Millennium producers' decision. They've just been like, yeah, we need to have you in this, and you'd be like, would I really be dressed like this? And you'd be like, yeah, probably not, but visually we need to have you in this. I think it reminds me of, I think it was Mercenary for Justice. We talk about there's a scene where an ambassador is kidnapped, and there's a gang, an ex-military gang who are doing it, and there's 4 or 5 of them, I think. And all the guys are dressed like commandos, and the one woman of the group is dressed in yoga pants, tight yoga pants,
right,
and a tight tank top, and nothing else.
right. Or
you're not sure that's how that goes.
Right, exactly. Or Black Dawn, right, where the nurse at the prison is dressed in kind of essentially a Halloween, almost naughty nurse outfit.
Like a Halloween naughty nurse outfit. Yeah, that was disconcerting. It was like, what the fuck is that? It's not quite those kind of latex uniforms, but it's almost that.
Exactly. And I guess when you see this now with Mari Morrow going to a children's hospital in this very low-cut shirt that's showing off a fair amount of cleavage, normally it's if you just saw this movie on its own, if you just were watching Today You Die, you'd be like, that's probably not appropriate for this. But now when you see it in the context of what, that we're on 13 of these Seagal movies, it's no, I'm seeing patterns emerge with these kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, I guess all we can say is, given what we saw in Black Dawn with the sexy nurse outfit, and given the kind of the commando woman dressed in that way with the tank top and the yoga pants, and some other characters we've seen where they're again, their costume is kind of sprayed on, I guess you got off relatively lightly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I guess I was trying to think. What the only other thing I guess left is Treach going to a Swiss bank to make a withdrawal.
Yeah, that happens before
the
children's hospital thing.
That's
so
right.
so Treach deposits the money. Because they've got the money now. Again, never described how they got the money back. Never described how Seagal managed to hide the money, or where he's keeping it. Doesn't matter, I guess. No. It's only a key plot point, but fuck you. A lot of this is just a fuck you to the viewer. You going to describe that black magic more? No, fuck you. constant just that throughout the movie.
Right.
But yeah, he goes to a bank. So like, at least that kind of makes sense because he deposits that in a Swiss bank. So obviously, he is, he's escaped from prison. So he is like on the run, and he's probably now off to a country that doesn't have an extradition process to the United States. But like Seagal is just like out in the street. He's killed several people.
Right.
He has blown up a car. He has blown up a warehouse. He has escaped from prison. There's the initial charge of him, like, however incidentally or not, apparently, we're told in that interrogation sequence, he killed 3 police officers. But he's just chilling, living his life, visiting the Children's Hospital. Apparently, because of that initially being set up, apparently Sarah Buxton's character is like chill with just like letting Seagal be totally free. And that's it. And then we just end on a kind of like Murder, She Wrote style freeze frame of like Harlan and Jada smiling and just being like, another mystery solved.
Well, that actually brings up a point I forgot to mention, is that throughout this movie they were using these little freeze frame things. And
oh yeah, that's true. They do a bunch of them. They do a bunch of them, yeah. Which don't really add anything to the film, but like they do make it odd, but like not. They don't use it effectively. Because they do it, because like usually a freeze frame is like a capper to something, whereas they do it kind of in the middle of things.
Right.
So like like when Robert Miano like has like his little shootout with the security guards, where he shoots the security guards, he do it kind of mid shooting them.
Right.
Which is like, it's like where the action is still happening. And you're like, yeah, it kind of makes sense if it's at the end of the action, so you're highlighting a particular death sequence, or whatever. But for there to be like, I shoot you, there's a freeze frame, somebody shoots back, you're like, yeah, that's not how you effectively use freeze frame. It's supposed to be, you're highlighting like a death, or you're highlighting something, you're freezing on something, but it's supposed to top a scene. It's not supposed to come randomly, unless you're doing something experimental and it kind of, but they don't do it consistently enough for me to think it's some sort of auteur technique. I just think I'm just chalking it up to incompetency.
Well, because the other thing too is the randomness of it, or the fact that they don't use it well. In the current age that we live in with streaming, you think like, oh, is my internet connection with something?
Am I going to see the Wheel of Doom in a minute?
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah.
I remember I reviewed a movie for Albert Pyun called I think it was called Bullet Face. I think that's the name of it. He used that technique, and I remember saying that, and he was like, "That's actually a good point. Maybe I should have fixed that. Maybe I shouldn't be using that freeze frame thing anymore because." In the current current world that we live in, those things don't.
That's true. It is. Oh God, I want to remember the name of it because I remember actually there is a sequence at the start of a Jean-Luc Godard movie, which I think it's Every Man for Himself.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
Yeah, it came out in 1980. I think it's that one where there's like a cycling sequence at the start, and it does a freeze frame thing a bunch of times, and I just thought like, is my internet okay? Is this supposed to be happening? But then he does it in a way like in other parts of the film where like, okay, I see. It's supposed to be some sort of artsy thing. Not Every Man for Himself. I would say it's not one of my favorite Jean-Luc Godard films, but I definitely think it's worth a watch. I definitely think it's a good one. It's not one of the, because he's inconsistent. There's some Jean-Luc Godard films I love, and even like all Jean-Luc Godard films are pretentious, but some of them I love, but some of them are like, oh, okay, this is a bit too far, John. I know you're naturally pretentious, but even by your standards, this is fucking wanky. But Every Man for Himself, pretty good. It's got a good. It's got it's got an early, relatively early, Isabelle Huppert performance, and she's pretty awesome in it. I think she's a great actress, and I guess like that's I guess right at the end of the episode, now that we've mentioned Goddard, we've kind of completed our bingo card of like mentioning football, mentioning some arty kind of art house director, like mentioning the UFC. We seem to often do that, there's certain things, certain side tangents that are commonalities amongst these episodes. So if you are following your bingo card, you can now call bingo, I think.
We've hit them all at this point. Yes, exactly. I was curious because I thought I had seen a Godard film with Isabelle Huppert.
She did a couple. She did another one called Passion.
I've seen Passion.
I've not seen, but I bought on DVD like last year, so I'm hoping to check that out some point soon.
Yes, that's the one I saw.
I don't know how many she did. I don't know if it's just those two, or if there was more. But there's that's the one that I've not seen. So you've seen Passion?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll have to check out my I used to have an old Tumblr. So and my Matt Movie Guy Tumblr account. And I think I did Passion. You can go on there. So I used to have an old. There it is. There's Passion. Yeah, 10 results for So I used to have back in the old days of Tumblr. I created a site called Matt Movie Guy, which I ended up calling this the Direct to Video Connoisseur, and then I lost the domain. But the Matt Movie Guy Tumblr, it is. I would watch like art house movies and just take like a whole bunch of screens and just post the screens. And so Passion was one. I've got like 10 screens of Passion on that. I mean, it's interesting. Tumblr's an interesting one. It's like the dead mall of social media site, right? It's like you gotta float through there and wonder what's still open.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because it's interesting. Like, I guess, like, before we end the episode, we will end the episode.
Right? Yes.
Don't worry, listener. It does. Everything comes to an end,
right?
Including this episode. But I will say something that I've talked about with a bunch of people is like it's interesting. Like what takes off, what becomes popular, and what doesn't become popular. Because like I think like in my head, the people who must be most upset about the success of TikTok is the people who created Vine.
Yeah.
Like they must like they were like, we did this, millennials hated it.
Right.
If we had just waited a generation, it would have been fine. We could have been a great success.
Right.
You're like, well, fuck you.
Right, exactly. Well, because
like they must be real mad.
Yes.
Like if I was any of Vine's investors, I'd be like, well, it turns out it wasn't a shit idea. It just came 10 years too early.
right, exactly. Well, because Tumblr, I feel like Tumblr kind of met the fate that MySpace did, only it didn't get done, and that was that Mark Zuckerberg, like how he kind of with Facebook, he turned it into MySpace and essentially took it out. And I feel like he did the same thing with Instagram, where he took things from Tumblr and said, well, why don't we just do them on Instagram? Why don't we just let people write like long posts if they want and post videos and have music on the posts and everything? And then I think everybody just kind of was like, oh yeah, I guess I don't need to do Tumblr anymore. I can just do it all on Instagram and Twitter. I guess Twitter at that time did all that stuff too.
I guess Instagram kind of killed Tumblr.
Yeah. But it still exists, though. That's the thing. The difference between MySpace and Tumblr is still there. You can just sort of. But I've heard like younger kids, like I've heard like kind of. I guess it wouldn't even just be Gen Z. It would be like Gen Alpha now. I guess who.
I guess like really young kids.
Yeah. They get a kick out of going to these old social media sites that really aren't updated anymore. I mean, my wife still goes on Tumblr. She still uses it and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like all that stuff makes you seem ancient.
Right.
Like, like it's just like, like telling people, like being like, yes, children gather round.
Yes.
I remember a time before YouTube, we used to check out videos on E-Bombs World.
Right.
Tell us more about E-Bomb's world, Granddad.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and because these things go so quickly nowadays too, that it's like, I mean, Tumblr. I mean, literally, my wife and I actually met each other on Tumblr. We were, at similar interests. We were messaging each other, and then that was it. That was, and we've been together for 10 years. In the time that she and I have met, Tumblr kind of took a tumble, I guess you could say. It's like,
just took a tumble.
yeah,
Yeah, it's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Why are
amazing.
millennials so fucked up, Granddad? Well, we used to visit this website called rotten.com, and you don't want to go there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that period, that 2000s into the 2010s period of internet, where like the tech bros were still trying to figure out what they wanted to get their hands on, and yeah, they hadn't consolidated their tech bro power to the extent that they have now.
That's true.
Yeah.
I do think it's funny as well, because like people are like, people who, you get that thing of like, you get older and you think whatever the kids are doing is stupid. You're like, what the fuck is this stupid shit? Like you hear like this kind of TikTok speak, and you hear stuff about like skibbity toilet and all this.
Right.
Like that's fucking stupid. And then you remember that like when you were younger, like that badgered mushroom video was popular. And you're like, oh. Turns out we were also idiots.
Right. I know. Yeah, you think of the stuff that like we thought was great with that kind of thing. I mean, the whole concept of this yacht rock thing. It was like a web series that was, I think, may have predated YouTube. It was on MySpace. The videos were posted on MySpace, and it was just like a couple guys that were like, "Oh, that kind of thing is funny," and suddenly now everybody, millennials and Gen Z are just like, "Oh, does that movie count? Does that song count as a yacht rock song? Does that?"
I know. It's like, but then again, although I will say, I don't think like Gen Z are any stupider or any weirder than any other generation. I think they're fine. They'll probably be fine. They're still going up. People make in their 20s, they make mistakes, whatever. Everybody's kind of stupid then. It's just an age. It's just an age thing. The one thing I'm genuinely angry at Gen Z about is, you mentioned the yacht rock thing, is that like that Gen Z have kind of brought back butt rock.
Yeah.
Like Nickelback and Creed and Stained and all these bands have made a resurgence, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like that's the one thing that I'm mad at that Gen Z have brought back. You're like, why?
Right.
Why?
Right. Well,
why have you got to bring back this horrible post-grunge shit?
Because Gen Z does not, they don't know a time before Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act into law, which allowed Clear Channel to consolidate all the radio stations. And the way it worked in the 2000s was you had one program director for like 150, 200 stations, and if that guy liked Nickelback, then every studio made sure all of their bands sounded like Nickelback, and that's how we ended up with a whole bunch of Nickelbacks and Trains and whatever other words like that. I mean,
yeah. And they're all making resurgences.
Yeah.
Like I say, that Puddle of Mud, Treat, Everclear, all these, like Jesus.
Yeah.
Why, guys?
No.
Why have you done this to us?
There's certain elements of that needs to be left behind, and I guess maybe like for like kind of the older Gen X, I guess what they call them, Gen Jones, or maybe that hated like those schmaltzy variety shows and stuff like that with like the Captain and Tennille and stuff that like like my wife and I get a kick out of it. People like our age sometimes get a kick out of watching those things. That for them they're like, don't bring those things back. Like just leave those things where they were. And I guess for us that's what it is.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's with the Nickelback Creed stuff. You're like,
right.
Oh, don't bring that back.
Right, no, just leave it.
Don't encourage Scott Stapp.
Exactly. Right. There was a time before those guys where lead singers opened their mouths when they sang. And, they don't bring back a time. We don't want a whole bunch of new lead singers who don't open their mouths when they sing. We don't need that.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I have mixed feelings because, like, I genuinely love Eddie Vedder, but
yes.
Like, he brings with him all the Eddie Vedder people who try to impersonate him, imitators, that are all awful.
Yes. Right,
To a
exactly.
man, they are awful.
Yes.
But I do love Eddie Vedder.
Right, exactly. Well, because that's the thing too, right? Is it's like Tarantino, like I like Pulp Fiction. I enjoy Pulp Fiction, but he essentially his he killed the direct to video market in the late 90s, early 2000s with all of these talkie scriptwriters who wanted to have, assassins have,
Yeah,
ironic
that's true.
conversations about fruity pebbles and stuff. And it's like,
Yeah, that's right. And they don't know how to write it, and they don't know how to make it good.
yeah,
So they just have, so you know, like Tarantino has like a point of view on things. Like even it might be a deranged point of view in some things, but it's fine. It's like an interesting point of view, whether it's funny or kind of mad or insightful or whatever. But but so many these script writers just think like it's just like, oh right, we've just got to have them talking about random things,
yeah,
like, oh okay, so we got to have them have a conversation about like a whatever, whether it's like fucking, like you say, like Fruity Pebbles, or like a random like cartoon from back in the day, like Mighty Mouse or something, like we just, and you're like, yeah, but like Tarantino writes about these things because he has like a connection to these things, or he has like an interesting point of view, or he has something funny to say about said thing.
right,
Like it's not just he just spits out random shit,
right,
and
right.
and Tarantino's not perfect as a screenwriter, but he knows how to write very interesting dialogue. So they've taken all the wrong lessons. I don't know, like, yeah, with the Eddie Vedder thing, it just, I don't know, like, it's like I think for me, if when I listen to that, like when I listen to Eddie Vedder, I hear genuine emotion in his voice. However manufactured that may be, because you're singing the same song. So obviously that kind of repetitive thing, how much genuine emotion you're bringing to that. But like so I guess there's a debate around that in terms of how manufactured stroke authentic that is. But I when I listen to him, I feel it. Whereas when I listen to like these kind of like your Nickelbacks and Puddle of Muds and Creeds and whatever, what it feels like to me is like just an impersonation and also like a photocopy of an emotion.
Yeah.
And that's why I hate it.
Yeah, you're not going to hear a song like Animal, Pearl Jam's Animal. You're not going to hear that from Nickelback, right? They could never put a song like that together and do that and pull it off and make it work. There's not going to be a studio that's trying to make other bands sound like Nickelback that's going to be able to pull that off either. That's just genuine music. And whenever I hear it, I hear, like the opening, where, Eddie Vedder's kind of mumbling through, and you don't know what he's saying. Then all of a sudden it's like, he just starts belting it out. And yeah, to your point, like, the kids should be learning about that stuff. Like, yeah, leave the Nickelback stuff alone. I heard, I think I heard one of them. I think it was like Someday by Nickelback. I heard it in the 7-Eleven in the convenience store here in Philadelphia, and I almost burst out laughing. I was just like, it was like one of those things, you get the laugh where it's like the smile, you can't get the smile to go away. And like, like if you go to talk, you might start bursting out laughing. That's what, and I don't know why it evoked that in me, but it was one of those things where I think just my friends and I making fun of it, and goofing on Nickelback all the time. I'm just like, going through the energy drinks and see if there's any, new flavors of Monster that I haven't tried before. And all of a sudden it's like, there's Nickelback and I'm cracking up,
Yeah. I used to get that whenever, like, because, like, I remember, like, back in this kind of time period, back in the mid-2000s, I would often watch, like, kind of music television. There was, like, a channel in the UK called Scuzz, which played, like, rock and metal. And there was, like, Kerrang had a channel. They were, like, a music magazine who briefly had a TV channel. Or maybe they still do. I have no idea, generally. And then, like, MTV2 played like rock music or whatever, and like anytime I saw, again, it must have been around this time period, I guess. Anytime I saw the video for Nickelback's Photograph,
Yes.
I got that exact reaction of just being like, this this is just. I mean, do they realize how stupid this?
Oh,
like,
no.
like,
I saw an interview he did about that song on VH1 when they were like doing clips like, "Hey, these are the new songs out," and he's like, "Yeah, man, this is what this is why we got into music for all the right reasons." And I was like, really, Nickelback guy?
That's one of the worst things I've ever seen. But like, and like, but it is kind of, it is hilarious because it's like this is terrible,
yeah.
And it's got kind of schmaltzy, kind of nothing emotion, and yet it's sung with this like 1,000% earnestness, and you're like, I don't know, man, this is hilarious.
Exactly. It's just, yeah, and it was one of those things where like the 2000s. You could feel it. Like I know, like when I listen to like the '90s station on our, we have these cable channels that have like music on them. It's like if I listen to the '80s station, there's not many that make me want to change the channel. When I listen to the '90s, there's a little bit more. Like especially towards the tail end of that decade, there's a few more that okay, I really can't listen to this. I'm changing the channel. When I get to the 2000s, there's just like a whole bunch of them. And people have always said, well, because when you're older, you're not in, And I was like, no, I was in my early 20s, and it's not like I was old in the 2000s. It's because of that the Telecommunications Act. It's like there's a video of some guy, Rick Beato. He was a guy who produced bands and he remembered getting the edict of make them sound like Nickelback when he was producing bands, and he brought somebody on who talked about this phenomenon. And because I think like in the UK, I think there are still more rock bands that put out music, like legitimately rock and roll bands that put out music that's not just pop stuff, and there's some traction there.
That's true. There is some traction, because I think like we should probably wrap up the episode. So I'll make this my last point. But like I think like the evolution of like what was popular and stuff like that is slightly different. In the UK, I mean, it's kind of changed now, for sure. But like certainly when I was growing up, I know from hearing about music in the States, particularly in the 90s, it seems like rap and R&B was really massive. Like you got Tupac and you got Biggie and you got all that, going on. And that didn't really penetrate the UK as much as it did the US. So like the hip hop became, obviously in the 2000s, became the biggest genre in the world. But like that had much less traction in the UK in the 90s, and guitar bands were still big. And then obviously Britpop was like a massive thing in the UK, and you had all that. And then even in the early 2000s, you had like, some bands that I liked, some bands that I didn't, kind of guitar bands like the Arctic Monkeys and the Libertines and the Kaiser Chiefs and all those guys. And then even the guitar bands from the States, like the Strokes and Interpol and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and the White Stripes, seem to be bigger in the UK than they were in the US. I think like guitar music, guitar bands seem to hold on longer. I think like that started to kind of go away a little bit and recede as the 2000s went on. And then once you got particularly into the 2010s, very much like guitar bands are well underneath dance music and hip hop or whatever. Even in the UK, where those things, well, I mean, dance music has been popular for a long time, but particularly hip hop was not as big in the 90s or even the early 2000s. And then it kind of, so guitar bands are still make some traction, but definitely not as much as they did. I would say that of those kind of like what I would call NME bands. There was a music magazine called the NME, which was very popular in the UK. And those kind of guitar bands that were kind of backed by the NME. I think the last big one of those was probably maybe like the Kaiser Chiefs, which is like kind of, talking of kind of 2006 era. That kind of thing, that was really kind of like a band that got a big bump from being like kind of pushed by the enemy, and kind of those music mags still having a big impact, which again that kind of died as well, like a lot of those music magazines have now shuttered their doors or are only online affairs now.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, speaking of NME, as we're wrapping up here, but I just remember here in the States, like Barnes and Noble, like big bookstores, they would have it. It would be like $10 for it a lot of times. It was like,
Wow.
yeah, it was like imported, from the UK. But it was one of those things that like, yeah, you were really cool if you were reading NME, and you're like, yeah, Pulp's on the cover. All right, I got to go out and buy that Disco 2000 or something. It was like that kind of thing, Yeah, for sure.
I think when I was first buying it in the 90s, it cost about, it's a weekly magazine, so I think it cost about £2 or something like that, which even in dollars is like, I don't know.
No, I think it was
$3.50 or $4 or something.
Yeah, because I think it was imported. I mean, this was a thing that they would do a lot of times with this, because there was a market for UK music stuff. So like for example, like Oasis, right? When they put out a single in America, they just put out the single, right? They might put out a maybe one B-side or something, but in the UK it would be these 4-song EPs that would come out with the single, and so they started selling them in America. And I remember Pearl Jam, they found out that because they had to do the same thing, when they were putting out singles in the UK, they found out that their singles were being sold in America for like twice the price. So what they did is they released them for $2, and they had a big sticker on it that says same songs as the overpriced import. But yeah, it was kind of this big thing. I remember when I went to England in '97, I bought up like all the Prodigy and Oasis and Radiohead stuff that I could find there, and then came back to America and found it suddenly being sold here.
Wait, are you saying that most bands, when they release a single in America, you just had the single?
Right. So sometimes you'd get like a cassette single or something like that. They didn't really do CD singles that much, but you'd have like a cassette single that would have like one song and then the B side. So like Ice Ice Babies is kind of actually a famous one, because Play That Funky Music was actually the A side, and Ice Ice Baby was the B side, and it was a record, one of the radio stations decided to play the B side, and became a huge hit. But yeah, you didn't have those 4-song EP kind of singles and I remember when I first discovered that with Oasis, I started seeing a few of those, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then same thing with like Radiohead, and then you'd see Radiohead in concert, and they'd play a song or two off of one of those, and it was like only the people who were buying those import CDs knew those songs in the crowd. Most people wouldn't have even known them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I'm used to, like, when I was growing up, I bought like CD singles. You usually had 3 or 4 songs on them. That's fascinating. Yeah. Yes, but I guess I shall hold this episode up no longer. We're always knocking films for being too long, and we've stretched this out to Rogan-esque indulgence.
well, I mean, the one thing at least that you can do when you can at least listen to a podcast while you're driving, while you're doing chores.
You can break it up.
A movie, it's like you got to have it on. You got to be paying attention. You can't watch a movie while you're driving.
And do whatever.
Yeah.
Clean your house, cooking your dinner, whatever.
Right. Exactly. But Scott, as we're wrapping up, anything that you wanted to plug?
I guess the only thing I have to plug currently is my podcast, All 90s Action All the Time, which is a monthly podcast. Our October episode, which will come out at the end of October, is going to be Desperado. So that's a good episode. We don't have a guest for that episode, but it's just me and Craig, my co-host, talking about that one, but it's still a lot of fun. So that comes out monthly. Next year, in March next year, we celebrate our 5th anniversary for that, so that's cool. Yes, I do have another podcast in the works, but I've not recorded an episode for it yet. But so maybe I'll keep that under my hat for now. But look out on my social medias. I might in the next couple of months be talking about that. So if you want to follow me on Facebook or Twitter or Blue Sky, you can just look up Scott Murphy. I'm there. And yeah, also All 90s Action All the Time are also still on X, Twitter, whatever. Don't know how much longer that'll be, but and also we have a Facebook page, so you can again just look up All 90s Action All the Time, and we will pop up. And yeah, that's all from me.
Perfect. Yeah, and when I share this on social media, I usually will mention Scott on there, so you'll see All 90s Action on the Facebook mention, or Blue Sky on the Blue Sky mention. I should also point out that in this podcast description, I usually list All 90s Action All the Time and New Horror Express, which was your old podcast that you did.
That is the previous podcast. Yes, the website is still up. All episodes, all 185 episodes are still available on iTunes, Spotify, a bunch of other podcast platforms. If you want to visit the website, I don't put anything up there anymore, but there is still everything is still there. All the episodes are still there. I did some reviews. I did some essays. So if you want to check any of that out, then I'd still be happy for you to check that out. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention it because if I didn't mention it, people might see the description and think, "Oh, that's Scott's new podcast," and it's like, no, that's not.
That's my old podcast. Yeah. It ran from 2018 to 2024. I'm very happy with what I did there. I talked to a lot of cool people in horror. Did a bunch of cool interviews. Include, with a lot of indie horror filmmakers, very interested in indie horror filmmakers, and also maybe some names like I talked to Kelly Maroney of Chopping Mall and Night of the Comet fame, and also possibly my favorite interview, I got to do an hour-long interview with Trauma founder and director Lloyd Kaufman, which is very fun. So if you want to check that out, definitely check that one out, because that one's a lot of fun. Although it can't be too popular because Lloyd says some things that possibly would get me sued by Disney. So just I want it to be popular, but just not too popular.
Right, exactly. And this episode, I'm not sure how early into October this episode will be, but hey, it's that time of year. So, you're looking for ideas for movies to watch. Check out New Horror Express and, listen to some of the people that were involved with making some of those movies. And they'll give you some ideas.
Yeah, I highlight lots of cool indie horror movies that were made during that time period, during the during the 6 years I was recording that. Lots of indie horrors. And if you want a recommendation, one of the people who I had most regularly on was a guy called Adam Stovall, and he did a great movie called A Ghost Waits, which is, I won't spoil it for people. I would just say go and check it out. I think it's a great movie. It's got supernatural horror. It's got some humor. It's got some romance. It's got a bunch of things, and you can easily fit it in any space because it's only like 80 minutes long. So that's one off the top of my head. But there's a bunch of others. There's so many great indie horror films out there, and many that I talked to a whole bunch of different directors with.
Yeah, and Ghost Waits, it's $2 on Prime to rent, so that's not a bad price to support indie. So I'm always, as you can imagine, I'm always a fan of people supporting indie. So I think that's perfect. So I guess at this point we're just about done here. So Scott, thank you again for coming on. This was another fun Seagal conversation.
Thank you very much for having me on, and thank you again for indulging all my EPL, UFC, art house movie tangents.
Well, you shouldn't take all the credit for the or all the blame for the tangents, because I am I'm just as guilty on those tangents. I think when it comes to hosts of these shows, when the guest comes on and the guest says, "Hey Matt, I only got an hour and a half," then I can nail it. Like I get the plane landed. But when we're on here, or I've got John after we died, or whoever, Ty, whoever's on, and there isn't a it's like, hey, all right, well, we're going to be talking about this. Then it's like sort of wherever it goes. So.
And I guess people can pick and choose. Like maybe they're into it, maybe they're not. I guess people kind of at this stage will probably know if it's me on or if it's John Cross on, it's going to be 3 hours. It's going to be 3.5 hours. So like,
exactly, but you never know what kind of conversation we're going to get. I mean, the Carol Vorderman tangent that he went on, people seem to really love that when he's talking about the show Countdown.
Yeah, no, that was really funny. I really enjoyed that too. Yeah, I dug that. I mean, I guess because I also, was in the UK at the time, grew up in the 90s, whatever. So
and so yeah, we may find that we get the same traction talking about Channel 5 in the late 90s as well.
And its propensity for Shannon Tweed movies.
Exactly.
It's great love in its early years.
Exactly. Well, thank you again, Scott, for coming on. This was a ton of fun. And thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back soon. Bye, everyone.